Oh, I have to leave these on. I went to take them off.
All right, let's start this meeting. Good evening. It's 6:02 p.m. and I'd like to open the December 17th, 2020 school committee meeting. This meeting is being held virtually through Zoom. The town of Littleton began conducting remote participation Zoom meetings pursuant to Governor Baker's emergency order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law on March 19th, 2020. Since that time, unanticipated legal concerns relating to the open meeting law have been brought to our attention by the town clerk. These concerns have been supported by the Attorney General's office and confirmed by town council. One concern is that the chat function allows a parallel text conversation to a board's public meeting. Chat is essentially running commentary that is occurring but is not moderated or followed by the chair.
Thanks.
All participants and listeners may not be aware of comments being made because some meeting participants join by phone and do not see these conversations. Another concern is conversations between residents within the chat room which are not incorporated into the public record. In response to these concerns, the town will implement the following changes which in no way prohibit any member of the public from participating in discussion and sharing information during a public meeting and will ensure that all listeners and participants have equal access to this meeting. People that join the Zoom meeting are set so their microphones are muted. If you called in by phone, please use *6 to mute or unmute your phone. So that the meeting can occur in an orderly fashion, we ask that people who join keep their microphones on mute so background noises do not interfere with the meeting. If you wish to participate in the meeting, please use the raise your hand function available on Zoom, or if you called in by phone, dial *9, which will activate the raise your hand function. The meeting host will notify the chair of the raised hands, and the chair will determine whether and when to allow public comment. When called upon, participants should unmute, then state their name and address. After speaking, we request that the participant return their microphone back to mute. All right, we are in this, opening this meeting at 6 o'clock simply to adjourn into executive session. So I will entertain a motion to adjourn from open session into executive session for the purpose of contract negotiation with the intent to return to open session after we are done in executive session.
So
So
moved.
moved. Perfect.
Second.
Second. All right, very good. That's the motion made and seconded. I'll take a roll call vote. Matt?
Matt Hunt, yes.
Brad?
Brad Austin, yes.
Timolin?
Timolin Rossius, yes.
Justin?
Justin McCarthy, yes.
And Mike Fontanella votes yes as well. We are now in executive session. We thank LCTV. They'll be waiting for us when we get back. Okay. All right, so I have got all my school committee members, got my superintendent. All right. All right, I think we're ready to start.
Okay.
All right. I would like to remind everyone that we actually started the open meeting at 6 o'clock and then immediately adjourned into executive session for the purpose of contract negotiation discussions. So at this point, I would like to entertain a motion to return to open session.
Motion to return to open session.
Seconded.
Motion made and seconded. I'll take a roll call vote. Justin?
Justin McCarthy, yes.
Matt?
Matt Hunt, yes.
Brad?
Brad Austin, yes.
Timolin?
Timolin Rossius, yes.
And I vote Mike Fontanella votes yes as well. All right, we'll start with the agenda. First thing on the agenda is the consent agenda, the minutes from December 3rd, 2020, and oath to bills and payroll.
What day was that? Sorry, I'm trying to remember. What was the date?
December 3rd.
Make a motion to approve the minutes from December 3rd, 2020 and oath to bills and payroll.
Second.
Second.
All right, motion made and seconded. Is there any discussion on the minutes? All right, hearing none, I'll take a roll call vote. Justin?
Justin McCarthy, yes.
Matt?
Matt Hunt, yes.
Brad?
Brad Austin, yes.
Timolin?
Timolin Rossius, yes.
And Mike Fontella votes yes as well. All right, next on the agenda, we have at least two sections on our agenda for input from interested citizens, one now and one closer to the end of the meeting. If there are any interested citizens who would like to speak before the school committee, please use the raise your hand function, and we will get you in front of us.
I don't see any hands raised.
Okay, seeing none. We'll move on with the agenda. Dr. Clenchey, do we have anything for recognition?
Sure. I'm really pleased, actually thrilled that we're able to offer a winter sports season this year. It's going to be great for our students to have that opportunity to participate in athletics. I'd also like to thank the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education. They purchased a number of cloth masks for all of the students in the districts in the Commonwealth. We picked ours up the other day, so we'll be distributing them this week. So special thanks for Desi for thinking of everybody.
All right, thank you. And we've got some presentations. We have a presentation on the advanced placement from last spring. An assistant principal at the high school, Keith Camo, is going to lead that out.
All right,
There he is.
there I am. Is the
Yep, we'll
presentation loaded? There we go.
pop it up for you. Yep, you're all set, Keith.
All right, appreciate it. Thank you for having me here to present about the AP scores from this past May. As we all know, the AP scores, AP test did run this year, even though we had a very different type of end of our school year. There was some adjustments made to the tests themselves. I'll go through those as we go through the presentation. But on the next slide, we have a list of the courses that were taught last year at the high school. We had 11 courses. Actually, there is one omission on this list. AP Studio Art was also offered last year. I left it off the list. As you'll see, there are 2 courses at the bottom of the list. They're AP Spanish and AP Art History that are not running this year. AP Spanish is running this year as a advanced Spanish course, a Spanish 5 honors, and AP Art History is a course that we don't run every year. It's a year this year that we don't have a tremendous amount of students that were looking to have AP Art History. On the next slide, you'll see the subjects in which students took an AP exam last year. We did have 21 different subjects that students took exams last year. Many of these courses that we didn't offer, for example, Computer Science A right at the top, students took those courses through either virtual high school. In some instances, they took the exam from a course that we don't offer an AP course in, like Latin, for example. We have a Latin 5 course or advanced Latin course that students are prepared to take the AP exam. It's just not an AP level course at the high school. There are also some courses that students took through Middlesex Community College, through our partnership with them, through dual enrollment. And so we did have students take 21 different AP tests this past spring. On the next slide, we have a breakdown of the number of students that took AP exams and the number of exams taken. As you can see at the top of the slide there, we had 98 students that took an AP exam, and we had a total of 185 exams taken by students this past year. As you look down for the previous 8 years, that's pretty much in line with any other year. We did have a couple high exam tests taken, like in 2019, 2016, where there was a much higher number of tests taken. That was from students taking multiple exams in those given years. But we're right in line of number of students taking the AP exams and the exams that were taken this past spring. On the next slide, we have a breakdown of the number of exams that our students completed that were scored at each of the AP score levels. As you all know, the AP exams are scored on a scale of 1 through 5, 5 being the best. 3 or better is considered a passing score on the exam. As you see on the chart here, we had 52 student exams score a 5, 64s, 46 3s, 24 were scored as a 2, and 3 exams are scored as a 1. For a total of 158 exams were scored 3 or better, which is 85% of the exams that were taken, which is a testament to the level of achievement that our students achieved on the exams and to the staff teaching those courses. On the next slide, we have a breakdown of, or comparison rather, of this past year to the previous 5 years. If you can pull up the next slide. Thank you. As you can see, again, the comparison, we're right in line with the number of exams that are scored at the level of 5 and 4. And our number of overall scores at 3 or better, 85% at 158, is a little bit lower than what has been the past couple of years. But it's still very high compared to the state average. I read an article just yesterday that was released about the AP performance statewide, and the statewide number of, percentage of 3 or better is 71% of students scored 3 or better statewide, and we're at 85% of our students scored at a 3 or better. So we're performing well above the state average on the AP exams. Next slide is a visual of the data from the previous chart, and again, the comparison to the previous 5 years. On the next slide, we have a chart of the number and percentage of students with 1 or more scores of 3 or higher. This year, we had 89 individual students score at least a 3 on one of their exams. So of the 98 total students that took an AP exam, 89 of them scored at least a 3 on at least one of their exams. So that's 91% of the students scored at least a 3 on their exam. Again, the comparison of the past 8 years shows us right in line, a little bit higher than last year in terms of 3 or higher. The AP Scholar program is something the College Board puts out, and there are 4 categories in which students can be recognized for their individual performance on AP exams. The AP Scholar is granted to students who receive a 3 or higher on 3 or more AP exams over the course of their high school career. AP Scholar with honor is someone who's an average GPA of average grade of at least 3.25 on all their exams taken, with grades of 3 or higher on 4 or more exams. AP Scholar with distinction is an average of 3.5 on all of their exams taken, and a 3 or higher on 5 or more. And a National AP Scholar is an average score of at least 4 on all AP exams taken, with a 4 or higher on 8 or more exams. So the next slide, we have a breakdown of this year compared to the last 7 years, 8 years. And you see we had 13 AP Scholars this year, 10 AP Scholars with honor, 9 with distinction, and 2 National AP Scholars. So again, those are kids who are students who are averaging a 4 or better on all of their exams and scored a 4 or higher on 8 individual AP exams. So that's a tremendous achievement, and we had 2 of those students this past year, for a total of 34 total AP Scholars in this past year. The next slide is a few notes about the exam and how it was impacted this past year. It was an abbreviated test this past year because of the COVID shutdown. The average test was about a 45-minute exam as compared to a 3.5-hour exam in previous years. There were some test subjects that were even shorter. The language exams were only testing oral proficiency as opposed to all 4 standards. The content standards on the test was modified by the College Board to include only content covered before the school closure. That being said, students and staff were only notified of these changes to the test format and to the test content on April 3rd of 2020. So, it was a pretty quick turnaround from April 3rd until May when the tests were administered. Remote learning, the model that the school was engaged in, as well as everyone else in the state was engaged in, made test preparation much more difficult this past year. We did a survey of the AP teachers recently, and that was one of the biggest things that stood out for them, was that the remote learning experience made test preparation more difficult than it had been in previous years. The College Board did publish instructions for test admin protocols that were intended to make the test administration go more smoothly. The remote test administration at students' homes, our guidance department condensed a very long document into a much more student-friendly version. And because of the work that the guidance department did on that condensing of the guidance, our students experienced relatively few technical problems during the test. There was a lot of anecdotal evidence that was collected through various listservs from administrators and guidance departments that there was a lot of technical problems in the administration of tests in other schools. Our students experienced very few of those, and a lot of that can be attributed to the preparation by our staff, by our guidance department, and by our students. And the last slide is a summary of just the performance of our students on the AP exams. Again, 89 out of 98 students scored at least a 3 on one of the AP exams this past spring, which is, again, 91%. Another interesting data point that I found on the AP College Board website was that 47.9 of our graduating class this past year scored a 3 or higher on at least a 1 exam at least once in their high school career. That speaks to the equity that we're trying to get our students access to AP level curriculum. So at least almost half of our graduating class scored at least a 3, a passing score on an AP exam at least once in their high school career. A couple of notes that this year, again, we did have 2 courses that we're not offering at the AP level, but AP Statistics does have 2 sections because of the high demand for AP Stats, and AP Psych also has 2 sections this year because of very high demand for AP Psych. So even though we did reduce the number of courses overall, the number of our students taking AP courses has actually increased. And a last note here that students that are currently enrolled in our school have expressed interest in adding or taking AP Economics, AP Chemistry, and AP Computer Science in the future. So as we look to grow and expand our program of offerings, those are some of the areas that students have expressed interest in enrolling in the future.
All right, thank you, Keith. Any comments or input from the school committee? Brad, go ahead.
Yeah, thanks for that, Keith. That was it was really good to see. I'm really happy to hear that our students had a good experience. I heard so many things from colleagues about students having a horrible testing experience. So thanks to guidance and everybody else who worked to make that that smooth for our students. Also, just really impressive scores by our students and work by the teachers and students, especially in this trying year. I've graded AP exams. To have that many students scoring 3s and higher is fantastic. Can I ask a slightly related question, but not directly on these data? This is, it's having that many students. I forgot the number you said at the end. If almost half our students have at least 1 college credit earned through a 3 or higher, 1 college class, 3 credits probably earned through an AP exam. I'm wondering how that correlates or how that relates to the dual enrollment and how we, if we're trying to get a sense of what our students are doing to be prepared for and actually to enter college with college credits. Can you give us a brief overview of how that relates to dual enrollment as well?
Sure. I think the short answer to that question is that there are multiple avenues to get the college credit. One is through the AP, one is through dual enrollment. So what we have done with our dual enrollment program, we've actually identified other areas of the student population that can get access to college curriculum by offering dual enrollment courses not at the AP level. So for example, this year we're offering our college prep statistics course as dual enrollment, where we also have AP Stats being offered. Our English 4 course is being offered as dual enrollment, whereas AP English Literature is the AP opportunity. Environmental Science this year is a dual enrollment course. So we're offering more dual enrollment courses in areas that we do not have AP level courses in the building. So we're offering a wider range of opportunity to students, not just the traditional AP student is being offered the opportunity.
In fact, I think you answered the question I should have asked. And to what degree, it sounds like we're offering AP and dual enrollment in some subjects, but the Venn diagram isn't a perfect overlap. There are some subjects where we don't offer AP, but we do offer dual enrollment. Is that correct?
Yeah, correct. Yep.
Okay.
So we have dual enrollment right this year in Latin, French, English, statistics, environmental science.
Great. Thank you, Keith.
You're welcome.
All right, anybody else? I have a couple comments. I would like to say that the consistency year over year in the scores, in the participation, is truly a testament to the teachers. I mean, the students come and go, right? But the teachers are typically here for a longer stretch. So for them to be able to consistently deliver that level of instruction that gets that consistent level of students to achieve at the level they do, that is pretty significant to me, and it just jumps out at me when I look at it. So I appreciate all the effort that the teachers are putting in year over year to be able to make that happen. Along the lines of the question Brad just asked, do we have a sense that in Littleton and other schools that the AP program is still one of the most beneficial and viable ways to challenge our students? Or is there starting, I guess I'm wondering if it's universally, those credits are as universally accepted at the college level as they used to be. And if they're not, are we evaluating our emphasis on AP relative to other opportunities to get our students to achieve at that level? AP is one way of doing it. Dual enrollment might be another way. But even maybe self-directed learning with the support of a teacher, where you're just creating a higher level curriculum than a standard curriculum, but isn't necessarily constricted by the calendar of the AP or the specific curriculum of the AP. Would we be doing that type of evaluation? And if we are we outliers, or do we feel like comfortable, like this is a good way to go when it's steady as she goes for the foreseeable future with AP?
I think that the AP program kind of across the nation is viewed still as being the rigorous level of instruction that colleges are looking for. That being said, when we first went down the path of dual enrollment, I remember when Ellen Grandin, the dean of Middlesex, came to speak with the school committee, and in my conversation with her as well, is that they felt at the college level, at the Middlesex Community College level, that the dual enrollment program was almost a different, sometimes better opportunity for students to achieve over the course of a year and not be beholden to that one-day test. Whereas in order to achieve the college credit through a dual enrollment credit, it's more of the whole body of work. You also mentioned the more independent directed learning. We do have students periodically who will pursue a independent study of course of study through higher level instruction because they've achieved a level above what we have in the building. They're taking AP Calculus, for example, or AP Physics as a sophomore or junior, and then are looking for other opportunities to extend beyond that during their junior or senior year. So we do have those opportunities as well. The AP curriculum is very standardized across the nation. And so that does allow for students to measure themselves against others in the college admissions process. But there are certainly other ways for our students to challenge themselves outside of the AP classroom.
Okay, I appreciate that. That's a great answer, right? It sounds like we're going to stick with the AP program, but all our eggs aren't in that basket. We're affording, different kids, different types of opportunities. I think that's the most important piece that I'm taking away from that response. So that's great. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. Anybody else?
Yeah, this is something we've been working on for a number of years. AP courses are well embedded into the program of studies in high schools throughout the nation. And I certainly haven't seen any reconsideration of whether or not we should decrease the number of AP courses. I think it's advantageous for our students to be able to access a number of opportunities to receive college credit prior to entering college. So we're on the right path at this point in time. Personally, I'd like to see us increase the number of dual enrollment courses at the high school, and we're working hard on that as well. So I'm very pleased with what I'm seeing. Comment about AP results, considering the year that we had. Our teachers certainly deserve significant commendation for all their hard work, going to remote, etc. And if you recall back during that time, we were trying to figure this all out, and we were going in 2-week stints, waiting for the direction from the state. So I'm really pleased with the academic progress. There certainly wasn't any variation between the achievement levels in those years, and we have a high number of students that are attaining grades of 3 and over. So very pleased with those results. So special thanks to the teachers, the students, and also the high school administration for also working hard to continue to make this happen.
All right, great. Thank you, Keith. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right. Next on the agenda, we're going to do our update on health metrics, and we have Katrina Wilcox-Hagberg here to give us her latest run through on what we're seeing out there.
Hi, everyone. All right, I'm assuming you see my slides and our pictures. Yay. Okay. All right, so we'll just jump right in like normal. So this is the first page of the daily report that the DPH publishes. Today, there were nearly 5,000 cases, mainly those, again, age 59 and younger. There were 1,800 in the hospital and 383 in the ICU. That's an increase over the past few weeks, and 44 deaths were reported. So this week marks 3 weeks post-Thanksgiving, and that means that the data is finally caught up with the impact that Thanksgiving has had across the state. So as I run through the health metrics today, I think it's really important that we kind of look at the impact of Thanksgiving, because we are facing 2 holidays coming at us in a 2 weeks time frame, plus a vacation. So kind of getting a feel for what happens with holidays might help us make better choices, or at least that's my hope. So this is the graph of the daily confirmed cases since March. So not only are we in the second wave, but our second wave is now about 2 times higher than it was in the spring. And the difference from the spring is that our businesses and schools are still open. And that means there's a sense of safety that we didn't have in the spring. Like, we were all pretty much immobile, not moving around, not socializing much last spring. So that means that people are mixing and they're interacting, and that is the environment COVID thrives on. So, and I also wanted to kind of zoom in on the November timeframe. If you look at the graph, so beginning of November, we were on a rise, but you can see this dip is Thanksgiving right here. And since then, we've had a near vertical increase in the rate of cases reported every day for the last 3 weeks. Oops. So that near vertical escalation of cases is the impact of Thanksgiving.
Rena, I'm sorry, how long that vertical,
Yeah.
what's the time span of that steep climb?
That is about 2 weeks.
Thank you.
Yeah. So for comparison, 1 month ago in the middle of November, our rate was 20 per 100,000, and right now it's 65 per 100,000. So over 3 times higher now than we were a month ago.
That's a Littleton's number?
Nope, that is the statewide number. These are all the states right now. So these are the statewide daily confirmed cases for the last 6 weeks. I marked Thanksgiving with a red line just so you can see the before and after. So Thanksgiving clearly did a number on the daily cases that the state reports. There was a clear escalation in the number of cases who test positive from before Thanksgiving to after Thanksgiving, which is unfortunate, of course, but that has led to a real increase in the number of cases that we see day after day being reported. So this is the rate per 100,000 by age group. That's reported in the weekly report that comes out. And this gives us an idea of what age groups are being most impacted by different events over time. And this data kind of also helps us see the effects of holidays. So you can see this report on 11/5 was the one where Halloween, right after Halloween. And in the 2 weeks after Halloween, the 20 to 20-year-olds had this separation. They definitely had an acceleration of cases right after Halloween, where everyone else was rising, but just not the same speed. So you can see Thanksgiving, everyone just took an escalation, a steep rise in the number of cases. And that's because generations were starting to mix and have dinner together and gather. So there is no one who's isolated from this. Every group is seeing an impact. So Thanksgiving as a family holiday, everyone was impacted. So this is the number of tests that are conducted, not the results, but the tests that are done every day. And again, I marked Thanksgiving with a red line. You can see there's a depression in the number of cases. I'm sorry, not cases, the number of tests conducted over Thanksgiving weekend. That's typical for a holiday weekend, that you would have lower number of tests conducted. But we now have similar number of tests conducted as we did before Thanksgiving. So there's no increase in the number of tests that are being done. And so that increase in the number of cases that you saw on the previous slide is not related to more testing. It's related to more cases, more community spread of COVID. So I also want to mention that we're a week away from Christmas. So people planning to gather at Christmas might be seeking testing in the next week so they can gather with family members at Christmas time and feel better about it. But there's been a lot of reports of people being turned away from testing sites in the state just because they hit capacity or they don't have enough tests. And there's also reports of tests taking up to a week to come back. So the test results taking a while to come back, especially if you're getting a test at a community, like a CVS or Walgreens. They send those tests out of state to be run. So those tests take longer to come back, especially with shipping and things. Shipping's all messed up. So anyone who's looking to test before Christmas may find themselves unable to test before Christmas. So these are all indications that our system is under strain right now, that that we might have some issues coming up into the next holiday. So this is the graph for the state's test positivity. It gives us an idea of how widespread COVID is, how the community spread. So the test positivity increased from 3.4% before Thanksgiving, and it's now around 6% for everyone together. When you take out the college tests, it's now around 8%. And again, you can see that we had a rise before Thanksgiving. This dip actually it relates to more people trying to test to be safe going into Thanksgiving gatherings. And then we had that large wall, vertical line coming out of Thanksgiving. So this indicates that there's just more COVID around our area and circulating. So this is the number of hospitalizations in our state. They continue to rise. We now have over 1,500 hospitalizations reported each day. Non-ICU hospital capacity in our state is currently under strain. It's 85% full, and ICU capacity is 73% full, and that's despite the state having started a field hospital in Worcester. They are planning to open another field hospital in Lowell at the end of the month. So despite them trying to increase the number of beds and hire more medical staff to staff the beds, we are at a spot where the number of cases that were actually right about now, the cases that were diagnosed around Thanksgiving are going to start hitting the hospitalization rates. So we're in a situation where our healthcare system can get overwhelmed very quickly right now. This is the number of daily reported deaths. This is the last indicator. It lags the most, and it's also the most final. This is, again, I marked Thanksgiving with a line. At the beginning of November, we were averaging about 20 deaths reported a day, and now we're averaging about 40. And if the healthcare systems of the hospitals get overwhelmed, the death rate will start to rise rapidly. That's what we saw in the spring. There's just not enough people and time to care for everyone really well if hospitals get overwhelmed. So the more cases we have, the more pressure on our hospitals, and the more pressure on our hospitals, the more people who will unfortunately die. So the governor earlier this week came out and at his press conference and was very clear that the Thanksgiving gatherings had a large and negative impact on COVID spread in Massachusetts, and it's putting our healthcare system under strain. So he said that in the 1 week period following Thanksgiving, Massachusetts had a 96% increase in the number of new cases reported each day, 93% increase in hospitalizations, 73% increase in ICU, 104% increase in intubations, and 84% increase in reported deaths. So these are not good things coming out of a holiday, especially when we're looking at 2 holidays back to back in the next 2 weeks. So this is the outcomes of contact tracing efforts in our state. These come from the weekly report that the DPH puts out. So for the 3rd week in a row, contact tracers have been having trouble getting in touch with cases. So people who test positive. This week it was 30%, but the last 2 weeks were each 40% were unable to be contacted. And this is yet another indicator that the test, trace, isolate, contact tracing system is under strain. And also that a quarter of cases the contacts of cases are unable to be reached. So we're not in a great state. Like, there's multiple things now that are telling us our system is under strain. And when things are under strain, they start to break. So we're in a serious time now. And we need to change our behaviors. So to look at local data now, this is just a reminder of what the colors mean. At this point, most of the state is red. When you look through the list of the towns, the majority are red. There are gray towns just because they're small, and then a few other yellows and greens, but red is the predominant color on the list of towns now. So this is Littleton's number of cases. So we are under 10,000 people, so we get to go by number of cases. This is for each 2-week period. So today's 2-week period ended last Saturday, the report that I have today. So we had 58 cases reported in Littleton in the last 2-week period. That was double the 2-week period before that. And remember, I go back 2 weeks to compare because this group of people is a completely different group than this group of people. So the doubling, of course, follows Thanksgiving, where this line is. We had a lag of, this first week was a lag of information. And then we had, coming out of Thanksgiving. But it is double. We are now double what we were 2 weeks ago. That's 2 weeks in a row. When we compare back 2 weeks, we've been double. So I know these look close together. And the hope is that next week we won't have such a jump now that Thanksgiving's so far away. But we're also, next week, it will be Christmas Eve. So in a week or so, we could have another one of these significant jumps if we're not careful. So I thought it was also interesting that to date, Littleton has had 258 cases, which doesn't seem like a lot. But of those 258 cases, the 58 we had this week represent 22% of all cases diagnosed to date or identified to date. So that's those 58 cases, that 22% came out of a holiday weekend. So we're approaching another holiday period between Christmas, the school break, and New Year's, that we could really see some escalation in our numbers if we're not careful. So this is the average daily incidence rate for all of the areas we've been tracking. Everything is higher. Everything is higher. The state's about 80% higher. County's 80% higher. 495% belt was 80% higher. Surrounding communities and our border communities are 60% higher, but Littleton is outpacing all of them. We are double. So this is our 4th week in the red. We're higher by a significant amount at this point. When we track it on the graph, we're of course trending with our surrounding communities. So we're not, for a while we were up with the 495 belt. We're not there, but you can see that in the impact of Thanksgiving, the red line, we had the lag of testing and reporting coming out of the weekend, which made this first week report after Thanksgiving flat. But then we had this large increase in the number of cases reported, and then we flattened out again. So the 2-week period that or 3-week period when our data is most accurate or needs to catch up, basically, we're behind on the data reporting, which happens every holiday weekend. We had a jump where we went from the same as our border communities, and we're now that one circle out, we're now aligned with the next band of towns that surround our border communities. So I know I'm returning to this graph. These are the towns that touch our borders or our border communities. And that's the spaghetti graph. So the average is the dark, the black line. When you take the whole area together, Littleton and all of the towns that touch our border. Littleton is the bright blue line. And in the middle of beginning of November, I was we're trending significantly higher than the other communities around us. And we managed to turn something around and we came back down. And we've been pretty in line with all the other towns up until Thanksgiving. And after Thanksgiving, we had a significant jump in the number of cases that were diagnosed. And our rate is much higher than many of the towns around us outside of Shirley. And I think that is Ayer, who are with us on this increase in this incline, the steep incline. But again, we've separated from the pack and are higher than the average. So this is not a great sign. we've got to do something different to bring us back down. So this is the test positivity for all of the areas that we've been tracking based on today's report. So we had an increase in the number of tests in our town. Before Thanksgiving, we had an additional like 200 tests than we had been having week after week before Thanksgiving and the week after Thanksgiving. And last week too, there were around 1,000 tests. And this week's report, we have an additional 275 tests. So an increase of testing suddenly indicates people are being close contacts, being told to go test, go see if they become a case. So this increase of testing is an indicator that more COVID is around and more people are being told to go seek testing. It also could mean we also could be impacted by the attestation form, like just having people, in order to comply with the attestation form, more people needed to go test. So that could have increased the number of tests we had conducted in our area. I can't really tell that from the schools because I don't have the school data. So that's something I can't really speak to other than there are more tests happening in Littleton. And our test positivity is over 4%, 4.86%, which is higher by 1.8% than it was 2 weeks ago. And this is when we graph our test positivity in all the areas that are around us. Again, you can see Thanksgiving, everyone was flat coming out of Thanksgiving with a data delay. And then the slope of Littleton's line was much steeper than everywhere else that we were tracking. That would be related to the date on the attestation form. So I'm assuming that some people may have waited to test until after that date. So we might have caught our increase a little later, and then we're kind of flat again. So we'll see where we are coming out of the next set of holidays, but we are definitely have a higher proportion of people who test positive now. So some other data that's publicly available. These are the DESE positive case reports in schools. I'm really thankful Dr. Clenchey met with me and Lynn Snow and Mary Philpott met with me on Monday to help me understand what data DESE is collecting from them in all of schools and to understand what this data might be used for to help us understand how cases are happening in school or arising in school communities. So the one thing I took away from this is that this is a really crude look. It sounds, if I understand correctly, and Dr. Clenchey can correct me if I misunderstood, but it sounds like the school reports all cases to DESE, and DESE decides which ones fit in the definition that they use, and they publish it. So the other thing that is very clear is that schools aren't reporting the number of students who are present in the buildings each week after week. So the denominators that DESE provides are really not robust, not useful. So you really shouldn't calculate a proportion of students who are cases in the school population, given the numbers they provide us. But what it could do is let us look week over week to see if there's a crude increase in the number of cases. And what you can see with this is that after Thanksgiving, there's some lags in reporting as schools were remote. Some schools were remote, some were, more kids weren't in, or more students and staff were not in the buildings because of closures of the holidays. So there's that lag of reporting right after Thanksgiving. And then there's a sharp rise again in the number of cases reported among students and among staff in the 2 weeks after Thanksgiving. So, and this is, I've been keeping track of our health notification letters that come out of the school and just kind of mapping them over time. And just looking at, we had like one remote student in October. We had two cases in later in October in the hybrid program, 2 in November. And then coming out of Thanksgiving, I think we all noted the frequency of letters that we were receiving was increased. And the data shows that. So the 2 weeks after Thanksgiving, the number of cases we were told about among the school community increased. That doesn't mean they were in the building. I know that the schools were working with the contact tracers and Neshoba Associated Board of Health. And I'm sure that, again, based on my conversation with Dr. Clenchey and his team on Monday, there's a lot more information here that they can share, but this is the publicly available data that we all receive, just graphed, so we can see how the impact of Thanksgiving impacted the number of times we were told about cases amongst our population. So let's just have a quick reminder of how COVID spreads. So one of the biggest way COVID is spreading is within households. So once one household member is sick, the contact tracers at the Neshoba Associated Board of Health are finding that multiple family members are testing positive. And that's because we share air when we're home. We're really close to our family members. We're not keeping distance from them. We're not wearing masks around them. So if you do find out someone in your family is sick, there are ways to try to reduce the spread within your own family. And one way is to try to isolate the sick individual if possible by maybe putting them in their own bedroom or keeping them in a bedroom, or if they have a bathroom attached to the bedroom, even better. Everyone should wear a mask in the house just to help reduce spread. Clean your surfaces, wash your hands often. And then if somebody is sick, everyone should consider that they might be sick and quarantine as a family and seek testing. That will help protect everyone who's outside of your family from spread. If you have one sick member and somebody else goes to school, that could really cause some spread amongst the school. So it's safer if you can keep everyone home if possible. And then it's really important if someone is at high risk of serious COVID outcomes to try to really separate them from the rest of the family. So if you have a high risk member, maybe they should be isolated in a bedroom while the other adult or whatever can care for the kids. And I recognize this is different for every family. Everyone has to do it slightly differently, but these are some ideas of how to reduce the risk. So using one or two or more of these layers can really help to maybe prevent some family members from getting sick. So the other way, we all know, we've heard for months now that social gatherings can increase COVID-19, and we just saw that the impact of Thanksgiving was pretty big on our statewide numbers and our town numbers. So many COVID clusters en masse are linked to social gatherings, and we're about to enter a 2-week period of festivities and vacations, and it's really important that we try to change our behaviors right now so that we don't have a repeat of Thanksgiving come January. So if you can, stay home. And if you can't, if you choose to gather with other people, please make sure to use all those layers of protection. We keep talking about the masks and distancing and meeting outside, limiting your duration of time together and all that stuff. We know what to do. We just have to actually do it. So the other way, another notable increase in clusters has been among restaurants. So those casual unmasked meals are a riskier activity. You're spending a large amount of time with somebody without a mask on. And I know restaurants have recently had to change the state's rules have changed for them, and you have to wear your mask unless you're eating or drinking. And they've reduced the capacity. They're trying to get a handle on that. But honestly, getting takeout right now and giving a big tip is probably the best way we can support, the safest way to support our restaurants right now. So holidays have all of the qualities of that COVID thrives under that we just talked about. So you're hanging out in groups for long durations, probably unmasked because you're familiar with the people you're with and you're sharing meals. So given that what we saw after Thanksgiving, it's really concerning that we're coming up on Christmas and New Year's and a break off from school and work where we might relax a little bit, or at least relax our COVID precautions. So the safest option to celebrate is to be just with those you live with and maybe gather virtually with others, extended family members or whatever. And again, if you choose to gather with others, remember to layer up. And that might include we're a week away from Christmas. A true quarantine from here to Christmas might really reduce the risk, especially if you can add a test in the middle. So a true quarantine is not running errands, not leaving your house, not going to school or work or whatever, but being home and then adding a test a few days before you gather. Ideally, you do that for 14 days, but we don't have 14 days before Christmas now. So the longer you can quarantine, the safer it is for the people you gather with. Again, the masks, the physical distancing, the opening doors and windows to improve ventilation, shorter duration instead of multi-day gatherings. And remember, if you do choose to gather, it's really important to think about quarantining and testing when you come out of the gathering to protect our community. and also to keep an eye out for symptoms for 14 days after. That will just help protect everyone in town. So the state has a website with a lot of details about how to help protect yourself for the holidays. So if you go to mass.gov holidays during COVID-19 in Massachusetts, there's a lot of information, including information about the travel order and how that's changed over time. Pretty sure there's no state we can visit now without having to abide by the travel order. And then I did update the cheese image because at this point we do have some vaccines. There is some light at the end of the tunnel. But that doesn't mean that, it's actually, let me restart. It's really positive. It's been great to see like my healthcare friends be getting vaccinated. It's like a little bit of light that is just, it's coming. It's going to come to us, but it will be months before the average Littleton resident will have access to vaccines. So until then, we're still in a long, dark tunnel. And we see the light at the end of it, but we've got to use every layer of strategy we can to slow the spread of COVID. And actually, if we can slow the spread of COVID, the less vaccines we need to have an impact. So that goes hand in hand. We'll help the vaccination process if we can slow the spread. So it's a great time to look at your habits, any decisions you make about socializing, your workplace, your shopping habits. Have you gotten a little more relaxed? You're having lunch unmasked with a coworker in close distance for long times, things like that. Anything you can do to increase the number of layers you're using more often, the lower your risk will be. But I think it's also really important for us all to remember that COVID is really sneaky and insidious, and it spreads before symptoms appear. So you can do all of these things to lower your risk, but it doesn't eliminate the risk. You can still get COVID. And also it's natural as we get nervous that we start pointing fingers at one another. But actually shaming people actually hurts public health efforts because that means people will be less likely to be honest. They'll be less likely to talk to a contact tracer and be honest about where they've been in the last few days. They will be less likely to seek testing if they think there's going to be a stigma attached to being diagnosed with COVID. So really if we can just, if we get nervous and we start blaming each other, it actually weakens all these layers of cheese. Not just how we relate to each other, but how well these layers that we've put in place to try to protect ourselves work. So there is nothing shameful about getting COVID. It's a respiratory virus that was well designed to infect us. And we need to do everything we can to protect ourselves, but also to care for each other because these are really hard times and we all need support right now. So hopefully we can get through this next few months and come out better on the other end. And this is just a quick reminder of all the things we should do every day just to help protect ourselves and others. Washing our hands, physical distancing, mask. It's important right now to check your health daily, look for symptoms. If you feel sick, the safest thing to do is stay home until you know what's happening. Talk to your doctor. Please cover your cough, use a mask, and clean and disinfect everything. And I think this is really important that if your kid is sick or seems sick, the safest thing to do would be to switch them into remote until you can either seek a test or talk to your doctor and get more information about what's going on. And I know that the nurses are really helpful with information as they help walk us through this process. So, and then most importantly, every time you're outside of your house, please put a mask on. This is, this is a really important thing to do, especially if you're in a public place. And that's a place you have to be. So it's also really, please help our kids understand the importance of wearing a mask whenever they're at school, if they're in activities, if they're carpooling with other people, or just hanging out with their friends. Adding a mask is a simple thing to do that would protect not only the person wearing the mask, but others around them. So please mask up. I think that's it.
All right. Thank you, Katrina. Lot to process, a lot going on. Different aspects of what's going on. Very little of it ever good, other than, like you said, the release of the vaccines is hopeful, but it will be a while before that's fully realized or even wholly realized, somewhat realized. Any comments or input from the school committee? Matt?
Yeah, no, again, thanks, Katrina. It's very helpful to see all those numbers. I was just looking at some of the numbers from the schools and seeing that, we did have a rise right after Thanksgiving with the numbers in the schools. So, I mean, I wanted to kind of have a discussion on whether we think that it would be a good idea to go remote for 2 weeks after the Christmas holiday.
We're definitely going to have that discussion. It's on the agenda a little farther down.
Okay.
We'll reiterate the numbers that we saw in the school community after Thanksgiving as part of that discussion. But we're definitely going to do that tonight for sure. And I think you're right, Matt. I think that the information that Katrina has provided this week and in the previous weeks is definitely going to inform that discussion on a significant basis.
Yep. Okay. Sounds good.
Anybody else? Brett?
On a positive note, I thought your slide game was really better. It's improving. The updated cheese is really nice, Katrina, and we all appreciate that as well. If sobering was the word we used last time, this is just ominous. It really strikes home. I know we're going to have a discussion about how this relates to kind of school policy. I was intrigued by your chart, and I think we'll discuss it some more later, Mike, about the 2 weeks after Thanksgiving. We all noticed we're getting multiple emails a day. It's certainly correlated between the rise in community spread and the rise in schools. Are you seeing in your kind of science community, or maybe Dr. Clinch or someone else can join in here, are we seeing much evidence of in-school spread, or are the schools just reflecting the communities they support?
I can answer that, Brad. Excuse me. At this point in time, we have not experienced any in-school spread. There are some districts that have schools that have begun to see spread within them. So far, so good. Our mitigation strategies have been effective to this point in time. But it is something that is concerning, especially with the increase in infection rates in our community and surrounding areas and the state in general.
The number that struck me is, if I got it right, Katrina, 22% of our total cases happened over the last 9-10 months happened in the 2 weeks after Thanksgiving.
Yes. And remember that 100 of those cases came before May. So I think like 60 or something of them were from the Life Care Center back in the spring. So the that number proportion is probably a little bigger if you take out the Life Care outbreak from the spring.
It's closer to, maybe if we eliminate those cases, they're probably not influencing our school population. Then we're looking at 35-ish%
Yeah, right around there.
total cases in the 2 weeks after Thanksgiving. All right. Thank you.
All right, any other comments? I do see a hand raised, Dorothy, if we want to
Yes.
open that up for community input.
Yeah. John, could you state your name, your question, and your street, please? Somebody's not.
Did we lose?
Did he come up? There he is. John, you're muted.
All right, can you hear me now?
Yep.
All right, John Kurzwick, 171
Yes.
So I saw the presentation, and I have a couple of questions for Ms. Hagberg. So, looking at the trends, the way the trend is displayed, I think we should be a little careful about putting too much emphasis that this is all due to Thanksgiving. I was just looking at Johns Hopkins website, and the trend is pretty much the same around the world, or at least the northern hemisphere. Cases are going up. Cases are going to go up for respiratory viruses, in the fall, winter, and early spring. They should start coming down. And this has been established because of the fact that as the absolute humidity goes down, the transmissibility goes up. So I think we should be a little cautious about putting all the blame on, Thanksgiving and people getting together. I know me personally, I did not get together with extended family. But one of the questions I have, and this goes to, what we should do for the schools is, do we have any estimate, or do you have any estimate as to what proportion of Littleton population is still susceptible to catching COVID-19? Published reports show that this virus has been circulating at least since December of 2019. So that would put us at exactly a year based on published reports. So you would have to believe that a good percentage of the population has been exposed to this virus. So my question is, you know, even though we see positivity rates kind of going up, it seems to be tamped down. I mean, back in the spring, I think we were at positivity rates of 20%, 25%, maybe even 30%. So maybe could you expand upon whether or not, you know, are we, you know, heading towards 20, 30% positivity, or are we, you know, kind of in that 5% range, and perhaps maybe stabilizing a little bit? Thank you.
Those are really great questions. And I agree with you. I don't think Thanksgiving is just because people gathered at Thanksgiving. There is more COVID circulating, so there's just more opportunity to pick it up. But I do think a holiday that's focused on family gatherings, there were people gathered. And then we're circulating and back in schools and or businesses and just out and about, that is tied to a holiday, especially here in Littleton. It was quite obvious. But in terms of test positivity, so last spring, the testing situation was very different than it is now. Because there wasn't really tests available. They weren't even manufactured yet. So the tests that were being used for sick people in hospital. And so those tests, and there weren't many other people being tested. So there wasn't many in the denominator who were negative, basically. So you can't really compare test positivity in the spring to the test positivity now, because the test scenarios are very different at this point. That said, there are places in the US who are at 30% positivity, and Massachusetts has just been slower to rise than other areas of the United States. So if we don't change something, we could end up in 20, 30% if things explode. Right now we're not, and that's good. And let's do everything we can to keep that test positivity lower by doing what we can to minimize spread as much as we can. Did that answer?
Well, just one follow-up. So relative to, and is there any information about what proportion of the population, at least in Littleton or even maybe Massachusetts, any published data that you have that would tell us what percent is still susceptible to contracting COVID-19?
Thank you for reminding me of that. So the last time, I haven't looked lately, I know over the summer there were seropositivity tests being conducted, and I think trying to get us an idea of how many people in the spring had been exposed. And I think those were like 10% of Massachusetts populations had COVID in the spring. I haven't seen an updated one since then. I haven't checked on it, but I know that in our area, we didn't have a huge problem in the spring, and we haven't had a huge problem till now. So it's probably unlikely that our proportion who are susceptible to getting COVID is really high, and therefore we have more protection than we realize. I think it's actually most people are susceptible to COVID still, especially here in our area of Massachusetts. Not enough for herd immunity, if that's what you're trying to get at.
All right. Thank you, John. All right. Thank you again, Katrina. We will hear from you again after Christmas. So fingers crossed. Have a merry holiday as best you can.
I get a break.
Yeah, exactly. And we'll see what we see when we get back. So thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Next on our agenda for presentations is an update on the school learning plans from the principals.
Who's going to go first? Chairman, would you like me to get it started?
Sure. Go ahead, John. You're live and ready to go.
Okay. So we did a Google form in the past week with our staff, our teachers specifically, to gather their thoughts around similar questions that we asked back in October. And the first question was, what do you think is working well with the current hybrid model? And staff reported that it's easier to distance with less students, of course, in the building. Opportunity for in-person students to access assistance in the classroom has been very helpful. They also expressed appreciation for administrative and tech support, and cited the recent instructional tech purchases as very helpful. And obviously, the HEPA filters went a long way in bringing some reassurance or some added confidence to the staff. So I appreciate Steve and the team's work on that. Also, the students have been incredibly cooperative and flexible throughout, the first half of the year. So they recognize the students. The teachers also reported that they're happy with the longer blocks. Overwhelmingly, the teachers appreciate the shorter, the having less classes per day. Instead of 7, we have 4. And high needs students are benefiting from 4 days in person. The next question we asked was, what do you think is not working well? And we do have some things to work on. I mean, these are things that we mentioned in our last report to the school committee: excessive screen time, the challenge of trying to teach simultaneously in-person students, remote students. Those came up again. And also the teachers wanted to note that, or did note that they're concerned about some of the remote students who are not viewable. They're putting their avatars up, and so you can't see them for most of the time, and they're less engaged while remote. They did cite a number of students who are struggling with the remote model, and so that was a concern. An increasing amount of teachers are expressing to me and Keith concerns about academic integrity, trying to ensure that students are not cheating on assignments or tests. There's some concern about that from teachers that's starting to surface. And some concern with how, there's this, government or the state has made adjustments to indoor dining, and we do have indoor dining here at the high school with the lunch, with obvious, safety protocols that we've been using since we opened. It's gone remarkably well, but, some staff, they're looking at the numbers, they're seeing increased rates. Katrina just reported extensively on it. And staff are concerned about the indoor dining or indoor lunch and the CAF. We have more students inside now with the change in the weather. And there's some concern, just it's always been there, but when students are unmasked on their mask breaks, they're not able to necessarily, they still are going outside to take their mask breaks, but there's some concern with how well the students might be getting a little bit more comfortable with each other and not keeping their distance as much as they should have. And we discussed this at a faculty meeting, so we're going to have to address that more with the students, keep very vigilant about it. The next question for the high school was, what would be helpful for you professionally during the hybrid or remote learning experience? They'd like some refreshers on tech and some specific online games and strategies. They also expressed that they'd like some more unstructured time to work with colleagues, more PD about how to work in the long block. Another question was, are you comfortable with the safety protocols at the high school? For the most part, the staff are, yes, comfortable. However, they are concerned. I've already mentioned the concerns about social distancing. Some cited that students have a tendency to let the mask slip off their nose. They drift a little too close to their peers at times during the day. We're making note of it and reminding students, to be more attentive to how they wear their mask. The next question was some suggestions for improving the hybrid or remote learning experience. I think it's already been mentioned by Matt and some other folks that there are a number of staff who would like to see us go remote 2 weeks after the winter holidays. So that came up as feedback for us. And they also wanted us to get some presenters, an online assembly or webinars related to different types of topics like digital citizenship, some of the other things that we might be not able to do in an assembly format in the auditorium, but they would like us to do that. So we're going to work on that. And lastly, I guess I would just say that there's a concern overall among the staff about the uptick in cases, the overall level of stress associated with that. Everyone's doing the best they can under the circumstances, adjusting to changing guidelines. So appreciate that. I wanted to acknowledge the faculty tonight, and and all the staff in the building, and say thank you for all their hard work. But that's about it. For the high school, I'm happy to answer any questions. We had the Google form is a format we'll use again. I guess another couple months. We're doing quarterly check-ins with the staff to formally just keep track of feedback and adjustments we need to make as we go along.
Any questions specific to the high school, Matt?
Yeah, I'm sorry, John. Did you mention whether there was an uptick in staff absences or having to teach from remote? Have we seen that at the high school at all?
Yeah, we've had some cases here and there where staff have been absent or not necessarily going remote, but it's a variety of circumstances. I don't know if I have hard numbers for you tonight, but here and there are staff that are taking days. But it is a challenge, like it is at all schools, Matt, across the state, to cover classes when we have staff who would work remotely. But that's not unexpected. That was part of our guidance to the staff. We want them to stay home if they're if they are symptomatic or have a runny nose or some of that that checklist that everybody has to look at each day and consider for their families. So I think it's mostly attributed to that. People being, we've had a couple of times where more than a few throughout the whole semester where staff have stayed home out of an abundance of caution.
Yeah, that's probably the right thing to do. I was just curious because I know that Jason will probably talk about it, but I know that at the middle school this week, we've seen a lot of absences with my kids, and for a variety of reasons. Some quarantining just to be safe, or some have legitimate other sicknesses going on. So I was just curious if we're seeing that, because I know it's really difficult to get a substitute teacher into the building right now. So.
All right, I can jump in. So we'll start with what's working. By and large, teachers really like the hybrid model in terms of its structure. With the teams that submitted their reflections, it seemed to be board. People like having every day people are coming together and leaning on each other for support. It makes me feel good to know that people are seeking that out and finding that. One of the other things that's working, Google has added some recent updates, such as a raise your hand function. It also sends you an attendance sheet at the end of each class, so you can see who was in your class, how long they attended, when did they leave, for teachers to know. Just the work is piling on them, especially this last week with the end of the term. So many kids trying to turn in late work and missing work, and it just gets to do to try and manage keep up with grading, to manage attendance. These things all take time, and in a 50-minute class, by the time you take attendance and get some of the other stuff out of the way, you're down to 30 minutes at best. And so I think that part, and then going home and having massive amounts of work to do, it's starting to take its toll. It has been taking its toll, but I think we really are starting to see it as we move forward, because we've entered that crunch time, end of term. And as we get ready for the breaks, teachers wanting to wrap up certain units and time everything out. Another thing that comes up and has building, like myself and my assistant principal, Matt Hunt, Matt Levangi, I with that to try and avoid pulling TAs whenever possible, but the numbers are what they are. We were down a lot of people this week, and so we've tried to reach out to every corner. We hired a new team chair a few weeks ago. I had him subbing a class. I even asked my secretaries, be prepared. You may have to cover a class if it gets to be too much. So we are figuring it out, but it's not been easy. I think some of the other things that are challenges as well is around student attendance. Students will show up for one class or part of a class and maybe not another, and so trying to figure out how to get those kids and keep them in classes has been a constant battle. Students being distracted at home, many of them admitting to watching Netflix or teachers seeing kids on their phones while they're doing that. So I think there are some of these things that we have to try and figure out, and how to work with families so that students are engaged and online and focused on the work that's in front of them. In terms of overall needs, the two things that really come out, one is time. People just needing time to work, whether that's PD, through PD time or staff meeting time, and also for better, more consistent communication from all levels of administration. And so these things came up over and over and over again. In terms of the overall comfort, I think the recent uptick in numbers, especially at the middle school, we've sent home our fair share of these letters over the last couple of weeks, has people a little nervous. They seem to agree that the protocols are good, but I think one of the things that's happening is like the adults, students are getting a little bit lax in some of their behaviors. And as teachers are cleaning desks, it's hard to be in the hallways. The administration team can only be in so many places at once. And so we really rely on students to police themselves. And while many of them do a fine job of it, it's not 100% across the board. And I think that's causing some teachers to be a little bit concerned. So we are holding on. We will get through this week and next, but I'm not going to lie and say that it's been easy. But we will continue to be dedicated and try and finish this month out strong.
All right, any questions for the middle school? Comments? All right, Cheryl, we're going to do Russell Street.
Hi, so I echo a lot of the things that John and Jason said. The Russell Street teachers commented on things that were going well. The breakout rooms certainly are working well for students to be able to work in small groups and to work with a variety of students. They noted that the students are really gaining technology skills in the hybrid and in the remote models. Routines are being formed, and so students are doing a really good job. The majority of students of coming on time in the morning and being able to take a break and come back when they're supposed to. Communication skills are also being developed, which is an added benefit of these models. And teachers noted that the remote Wednesday gives an opportunity for the whole class to work together with no masks, and that's really beneficial. In terms of things not going well, teachers noted that we have network issues on occasion. Our tech department is doing a great job helping us, but recently we've had some tech issues that have been problematic at Russell Street. As the other two principals noted, the teachers at Russell Street are indicating that the time and effort that is taken for them to prepare is really quite extensive. Most teachers note hours every day outside of the school day is spent just preparing for tomorrow. We have students that have moved to, within the hybrid model, who have moved to fully remote for a short period of time. And while we are able to move from hybrid to remote, and that's fine, it has created a third cohort, essentially in those classes, which indicates to teachers that they have to, we have gotten into this nice habit in the cohorts of sending home materials on Tuesday for cohort A and then on Friday with cohort B. And for students who stay home fully remote throughout the week, it's created a third cohort of students that are fully remote within that class, and it's difficult to get materials out to them. So not an insurmountable problem, but it's an added piece on an added layer for our hybrid teachers. We continue to remind students about social distancing. They're young, 3rd, 4th, and 5th graders, so it's a constant reminder to, measure out their arm lengths in the hallways, and certainly during unstructured times like recess, to stay away from one another and maintain social distance. And, that's makes people nervous. We continue to struggle with getting subs into our building as well. We have subs on occasion, but oftentimes, as Jason indicated, we have learning assistants filling into classrooms. And certainly the increase in the COVID cases in the community have made the staff pretty nervous over recent weeks. One of the things in the what would be helpful is I think we made this commitment in the summer and fall in having our programs be as synchronous as possible. And one of the things that teachers are indicating is it might be that the amount of synchronous that we are doing might actually be too much. And teachers were wondering in this reflection if they could begin to do some thinking about having a different portion of their day be potentially asynchronous. So we'll be talking about investigating that. I wanted to add too, though, that within our models, we only had 5 requests for a change in model. 3 of those requests, 1 in 3rd, 1 in 4th, 1 in 5th, were to go from a remote setting to a hybrid setting. When I spoke with those families and indicated that they would need to change teachers, all 3 of those families decided to stay in the remote program because they were so happy with the teacher that their child currently had in the remote program. And then we had 2 requests, 1 in 3rd and 1 in 5th, for students to go from hybrid to remote, which is absolutely fine and easy for us to slide into. So that's Russell Street.
Any questions or feedback on Russell Street? Brad?
Yeah, I've got a question, and I was going to save it to the end, but since Ms. Temple brought it up, I'll ask it now. I think I saw somewhere, and I didn't write down the site, that the DESE is again pushing districts to do things without either telling them to or mandating it. But it seems like I saw somewhere where the state is really pushing more synchronous, more what are called live teaching. So I was wondering to what degree we're bound by that, and to what degree we're already compliant with that.
Dr. Clench, you want to grab that one?
I'd be more than happy to answer that. I've been following that this week. I actually was in attendance at the Board of Education meeting this week as well. The commissioner requested that the Board of Education pass emergency statutory changes in regard to student learning time. What that means is they are now mandating X number of hours per 2 weeks for synchronous teaching. I believe it's 35 hours for our hybrid students, 40 hours every 2 weeks for our remote students. Again, that's a statutory change written into regulations. It passed at Thursday's meeting. So that's something that we're bound to do since it's a regulation.
Is that K through 12? Is that all grades?
That is K through 12. They really didn't talk about preschool. We're going to need some clarification on this. This really happened quickly, Brad. We did not have input into this process at all. It was kind of, sprung on us, and it was a process that was very short, to say the least.
Yeah. So my math, I'm a historian. My math isn't great, but 40 hours for 2 weeks, that's 40 divided by 10 is 4 hours a day of synchronous
Right.
teaching. Does that include, give me an example. If I'm a teacher and I say, hey, we're all reading, but I want you to read for 15 minutes on your own, and then we'll come back and we'll talk about this. Does that count as 15 minutes towards the 40 hours, or is that not?
If the teacher is actively engaged in monitoring those students, yes. And there would be some type of process in terms of asking questions. I guess an easy way to answer that, Brad, if students were in breakout rooms doing that and the teacher was popping in and out of those breakout rooms, yes, it would be synchronous.
What about, as a teacher, sometimes I like my students just to work without me bothering them. And so I can imagine, like, for counting, part of this counting hours, I don't know how the state will measure it, but if we're for the hybrid students who are in person, if they're given time to read, if they're given time to work on the math set or whatever it is, just because the teacher's in the room, does that count as in-person teaching?
It does. Brad,
I don't need to push you on this. I'm just trying to figure out how they're going to enforce this, especially if it's a law, if it's an actual mandate.
They can't enforce it, Brad. They're not going to, and I'm not jumping on you. I'm jumping on Desi, right?
Well, they do a lot of, yeah.
This is another example of them feeling like they can come in and tell districts minute by minute and day by day what they expect, and which is often frustrating enough in the best of times. But in the worst of times, this kind of ridiculousness coming down from on high is, look, I trust our administration that they're already dealing with this, right? They're already working on with their staff to set the right balance of what they think is achievable in terms of what we're trying to surmount and what is most beneficial to our students. And as far as I'm concerned, I have enough confidence in our administration and our teachers that I'm going to leave it to them, and I'm not even going to listen to what's coming down from those guys. And if they want to come to Littleton and open our books, they can knock themselves out, but I'm not holding my breath that they're going to show up at Russell Street or Shattuck Street or King Street or Shaker Lane to do that. And until they do, I'm not worrying about it.
That's the approach I'd advocate too. And I listen to Ms. Temple. I want our leaders to work with our teachers to figure out what's best for our students, and have this feedback loop where we're reflective. I mean, that's part of education.
Yeah, and we do. And I know
I just want us to have the flexibility to do that. And so it sounds like Ms. Temple will have that flexibility, and that's what I want to make sure we have. Thank you.
You got me going, Brad. Why'd you do that?
And I'd like to continue on if I could. Thanks, Chairman Fontanella. Brad, I know the road you're going down, and we certainly, the Superintendent's Association certainly presented a passionate plea for taking a look at engagement rather than just simple synchronous learning. We all know that there are a variety of strategies work effectively with students, and our goal is to engage students as much as possible in the learning process. By setting fixed times for synchronous learning does not necessarily mean that's engagement. So we are meeting those requirements, by the way. And, I'm comfortable with where we're at. I'm, as a superintendent, I am the academic expert for the district, so to speak. We do entertain some flexibility. My goal as that leader is to ensure that what we're doing in our classrooms touches every student in a positive way and creates the best learning environment for all students, and we'll continue to do that. It is frustrating, although I understand that they maybe are frustrated as well. But I mean, we've been doing this now for a number of weeks, and if they would have perhaps entertained doing this at the beginning, it would have been a little more palatable. But to come in December and start looking at this at this point in time, it's a little frustrating. I'm pleased. I'm pleased with what we're doing as a district. I've had an opportunity to go into a number of our classrooms virtually. I have not been in the high school virtually yet, and after hearing John talk, that's going to be my project after the holidays to get in some of those classrooms virtually. But our students are learning, our teachers are using effective strategies. I'm very proud of what I see in our district. So I just wanted to share that with you as well.
Thank you. And I didn't want to sidetrack this, but since Ms. Temple brought it up, it was a question I had. So thank you.
And I do see Pam Abate with her hand up, and Pam is a teacher in the district, but I'm just going to ask Pam to hold on for a couple more minutes, and I just want to get through Shaker Lanes, and then once we finish with Shaker Lane, I'll be happy to have Pam make a comment. So go ahead, Michelle.
Thanks, Mike. Good evening, everyone. Pretty much everything that the other principals already presented. I might have a few more things that aren't going well, but we came off a stressful week last week, and we filled this out on Friday. So some of the positives in our building, I want to echo what Jason said. We are all working together. Each of the teams have become so cohesive and collaborating and staying on the same page and teaching together. So that's great to say. Thank you to Steve for the air purifiers. It's great to have those in our buildings now. The smaller class sizes are definitely an advantage at this time. The kids in the hybrid model, when they are in school, they are happy. Talk a little bit later about when they're at home and then the struggles I'm seeing at this time. Tech support, huge shout out to them, specifically Brian O'Neill, always supporting us. Our fully remote students are becoming more independent. they've got that cycle down. It's day after day. It's repetitive. They're doing great. Lexi is going well. We've started to use that reading program. Our K team, kindergarten teachers and teaching assistants are supporting grade 1 and 2 teachers in the afternoon. That's been a huge help for those teachers. And remote Wednesdays are in a groove. Those go well for all of the teachers. They look forward to having all of the kids in front of them, working with them on Wednesdays. Things that aren't going well, you know, that this list is starting to increase a little bit more from when we filled it out in October. The time to clean, amongst everything, the time to clean up. Students going remote, as Cheryl mentioned, with a little notice. It's the next day they're going remote and they have to get the materials together, but those materials went home a couple of days ago. That is hard for the kids. And like she said, there are now 3 cohorts. Keeping track of those kids is tough. Substitutes. Yep, I taught kindergarten. I think I've taught preschool. Miss Deacon has taught a lot of foundations lessons for classrooms. It's difficult to get subs. Thanks to Mrs. Steele. She came in the other day and helped us out as well. That is definitely a struggle right now. Keeping the distance is really difficult. We continue to do it with extra PPE, but teaching kindergartners how to write and not be close to them, and how to form the letters and how to hold the pencils and not be up with them is really tough. Internet continues to be a struggle at Shaker Lane, although it's not the tech department. I think they're working hard, but it's a consistent daily issue in our building. Keeping our remote kids engaged. They're becoming savvy. They're learning how to go onto YouTube and watch and not engage in the classroom. So we got to keep them on task. Students completing their work, and the biggest increase that I've seen, and that's not going well, is what's happening to our hybrid kids when they are in the remote session. They're having a really difficult time bouncing back and forth, coming in for 2 days, being out for three working days, but then 2 weekend days. And it's really tough for these little guys. They need to be in person. That is a struggle. Online learning for them is not something that's going well. Things that would be helpful. Just a couple of things that were challenging right now as far as safety protocols. Agreed with Jason, consistent or more communication from building admin, from central office. I think last week when we had our positive cases, that's when we started to really figure out, what are the steps we go through and how do we communicate? So I made sure I shared that with our staff last week. At the end of the week, we had a staff meeting on Monday to talk a little bit more about that. As Katrina mentioned, the delay in test results is affecting, some contact tracing. So that's a bit of an issue that affected us. Things that would be helpful for us. There are a few building-based things that we can work on. Getting the playground open for our little ones. And some other things that really aren't it's working with a preschool team on arena evaluations, process and timeline before a child arrives in the school. So a lot of the similar things. I think last week was a difficult week for us, and emotions were high, and they just are very concerned about everyone's safety, the students and their own. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Any specific comments or questions for Shaker Lane? Timberland?
Hi, Michelle, thank you. You had said something about the online learning not going well. How are the classes that are actually all remote going, those classes?
Those, Timberland, are going very well. I think because
Okay.
it's consistent routine. It's the same thing every day, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. The problem with these little guys, 5, 6, and 7-year-olds, some of them are 8, they come in for 2 days, they're home for 3 working, but then they're home for 2 on a weekend day. It's the bouncing back and forth that
The non-structure of it.
It's not working well. And it was going strong, but I'm just seeing more on the daily, either parents that are calling in saying that their children aren't doing well in the remote setting, or teachers that are having trouble with the kids in the remote setting. I think, we talked about the sustainability of this model, and I think we're at the tipping point where I'm just not sure. And I had a conversation with Dr. Clenchy and Beth Steele after Thanksgiving about, when the time is right, is there a way we can get all of these hybrid kids back in the building safely?
Yeah, thank you. That's all.
Mike, I had a quick question.
Yeah, go ahead.
I just wanted to touch on the Wednesdays, and this might be a good form since we just kind of went through every single building. And I would think that maybe the different grade levels have different opinions as to how the Wednesdays are going and what's the best use for them. But I heard that there are huge benefits of being in person. And I also heard that there are some negatives or some major distractions with the children being at home. And then I also heard that it's great having the class all on a level playing field and you don't have to wear masks, and there are benefits to that. So it's 50-50 as to, should we keep Wednesdays as they are, or should we make an adjustment there? And I was just wondering if folks could touch upon how they feel if we would benefit in maybe making an adjustment to the Wednesdays. Right now, our hybrid learners are only in school 4 out of every 10 days. And if we were to try to change something there where that population alternated using the Wednesdays, they would be in 5 out of every 10 days, or 50% of the time. So they'd pick up an extra 10% of the school year, the remaining school year, with in-person instruction. And I was just curious as to what the administration thought, if that would be a benefit or maybe not something worth chasing. Cheryl?
I'll respond. I think, speaking for the Russell Street teachers, I think the Wednesdays are, especially for hybrid, obviously are extremely valuable for them, because it's the one day a week that the hybrid teachers are teaching with no mask on. And it's the only day out of the 5-day week that they have all students together with no mask on, to work together in breakout rooms and things like that. Otherwise, it's, 10 kids at home with no mask and 10 kids in front of them with a mask on. And so they find those Wednesdays really, really valuable. That comment came up over and over in the last reflection. And I understand the wanting to get kids in person in front of the teacher an extra day. But I think to keep the class kind of together and to have one kind of normal day with your teacher without a mask on, and everybody being able to work together in the breakout rooms like that is really valuable for them.
I'd like to just add on to that. What I meant by bringing them back in, or bringing them more in, bringing them all in. So I think the one additional day, while it sounds great, I'm going to be honest with you, my hybrid teachers need that Wednesday. They need that Wednesday to be with the whole class, all of them at one time. So I think if we said, oh, we're going to add them in one more hybrid day, I really think that they probably would break. I think they are at a point where Wednesday is a groove. They've got Wednesdays down. The problem is the shift back and forth. So bringing them back in, all of them, I just don't know if adding an additional day to the A cohort and B cohort is the best idea right now as well.
Yeah, I just add that. Just one last thing, that from the high school about this, it has come up in discussion at some point, how we would look at Wednesday when we are based on the numbers, metrics are really high and concerning right now. But at some point, as we try to transition students back, we would look at that Wednesday, Justin, to see how we could do it, maybe alternate weeks with the cohorts. That has come up with, you do it 3, one cohort is in 3 days in person. And that would be a gradual part of transitioning when it is safe to do so. And I think, the other principals have already mentioned the benefits the teachers find right now with the current remote Wednesdays.
Mr. Harrington, am I right?
Brad, before I want to say, Jason, do you want to chime in on that?
Yeah, I just want to say thank you to John, Cheryl, and Michelle, because they've touched on a number of things. And everything they're saying is absolutely right. Our teachers, I think Wednesday becomes the one day of the week that is the most consistent of the 4 days. And I will just speak to the 3 weeks since Thanksgiving. We had a number of families who reached out over the Thanksgiving holiday to say that I'm not sending my children back. We're gonna go remote temporarily. So the in-person part of teaching kind of fell apart those days, because all of a sudden we had a dozen kids who are now not in the building. We have kids who wake up who say, I don't want to go to school today, and then they're not in. And so the in-person part right now is very, very tricky. It also presents a logistical nightmare in terms of planning. If you're going to have one group in on 1 week and you're going to have another group in for 3 days on the other week, you've got to account for that in terms of what you're doing, because that extra in-person time can also become really difficult. And so then when we're talking about materials distribution, we're talking about all kinds of things. What do we do on half days? Are we balancing this out per month? It gets into an area that it may cause more problems than it solves. But I think Cheryl touched on it and Michelle did as well. I think there's also a piece of this that is just, it's an opportunity to take a breath and one day a week have what in the middle of a pandemic is the most normal class you could possibly have. All the kids in there at the same time, whether it's remote or not. The other thing that I want to address is that we at the middle school have started to have conversations over the last few weeks. Our kids need help. They need help after school. They need help in school. And right now, because we're short staffed and because we don't have some of the things that we used to be able to have, we want to be able to provide opportunities for our teachers to help kids on Wednesdays. Cheryl mentioned something about going, having more asynchronous work. I'd love to use that time on Wednesdays for teachers to meet one-on-one with students, right? So they can give that in-class support that they can't otherwise. And so I'd hate for us to lose Wednesdays when it could be a real valuable opportunity for us to be able to make deeper connections with students and really support their learning, their social emotional health. Because that's the other part that we haven't really talked about much is the student social emotional health, those deep enriching activities, those times where you get to work with a kid one-on-one. Wednesday would be a great opportunity for that if we could keep it remote.
Thank you. I'm glad I asked the question because it seems like a good consensus there. The only other thing I'll add is I was, very pleased at everyone's reports. And the sort of the sneaky underlying message, I think, is that as we're in school longer, we get a little bit more comfortable. We get a little bit more lax with our safety measures. What could shut this all down in terms of a need to shift to remote would be evidence of community spread within the buildings, which we absolutely need to try to avoid our very best, or the ability to staff the buildings. So the staff, just as well as the students, need to remain diligent with the safety protocols. And one of the things so I think it's a great opportunity to sort of reevaluate the indoor dining, the distancing, all that stuff. One of the things I have personally observed, which maybe we should address, is the busing. So the buses in the beginning of the day seem to pull up, at least the school that I observe, and the kids stay on the bus. And there's one adult on the bus who's kind of at the wheel, and they might not be watching the 5 or 6 or 7 kids at the back of the bus, and they're there for 5 or 10 minutes, and they're not social distancing. The windows are up this time of year. So things like that should we be readdressing, sort of the day-to-day stuff, so that we limit our opportunity for community spread. I think those kids maybe need to get off the bus and get into the building and get some more supervision. So thank you.
Cheryl, go ahead.
I just want to make one more comment. I think, all of us touched on the fact that, and obviously Katrina talked about it at the beginning, the number of cases in the community now. And I think it's really important for us to remember that just the way we were all feeling on September 17th when we came back into the building, right, after being out for that amount of time, and all of the planning that we did and all of the safety measures that we put in place. And at that time, with all of that in place, there were 0 cases in the community for week after week. And we were, at this kind of, heightened awareness, but there was nothing going on. And I think that we have to really consider how people are feeling now with the rising cases in the community, that just the absolute awareness that this is happening around us, and people's sense of responsibility coming into the building every day, knowing what's happening in our community and the surrounding communities has made it really difficult for the past several weeks, for sure. And I know other people have touched on that, but I think it's really worth repeating.
Mm-hmm. Brad, did you have a comment you wanted to?
I did. I was going to ask Mr. Harrington a question, but that can wait. I guess my thinking is, and thanks to all the principals for these reports, is that if kind of unstructured but purposeful time is good for students, then it's also good for the people who are leading them. As when we plan our professional development days, I hope we can listen to the teachers and the principals and try to find some time for that. I guess my questions, though, relate to 2 issues that are common to all the buildings, but we didn't really talk about. One is, we're talking about the staff feeling really stressed, almost burned out, or almost broken in some of your language. I wonder if that includes the nursing staff. If we could hear something about, are we able to staff those offices the way that we need to keep this operation going? And the second is, and maybe it's Lynn, maybe it's someone else. IEPs and 504s, the students who, how is that process working? Do we think for those kids who need a little special attention or help?
Brad, I can answer the first question. Like all of our staff, they're working extremely hard with the involvement in all that they already do, and add on extra contacts for parents with students that are asymptomatic, symptomatic for COVID, follow-up calls, etc. They're putting in a lot of hours. We did hire an LPN to help them out. We just have to be very careful that we don't keep adding things to their plates. It's kind of interesting how this evolves as infection rates increase. Our nurses are spending more time being directly involved in contact tracing and following up on those calls. I have to tell you, though, I know Katrina and I had this conversation. The contact tracers outside of our school, they are having more difficulty trying to get a hold of close contacts, etc. We make sure we do, and that's a mitigation strategy that's working well for us. But the credit goes to the nurses for making sure that they're following up until they actually get a hold of somebody. And I'm going to turn the second question over to Lynn.
Sure. I'll piggyback on your comments about the nurses. I think that they're doing an incredible job and they are working incredibly hard, and the family engagement piece and the follow-up with the cases, the contact tracing, students who are symptomatic, students who have been sent to a doctor because they're symptomatic and may just need to follow up on those things, those typical pieces. That's very time consuming. One of the nurses commented that currently she's tracking in communication with like 16 different families for a variety of different reasons. And that's kind of a typical day in their life in this under these circumstances. So I can say, just to go back to what Justin mentioned too, those Wednesdays. Those Wednesdays are an incredibly valuable time for the nurses to be able to interact with one another and to do that follow-up piece and to communicate with each other as a nursing team. We're tracking a tremendous amount of soft metrics in the district, and so their time to be able to have those conversations, review those metrics is essential, and I think has really contributed to the ability for us to kind of like control the situation as much as it could be controlled under these circumstances. With regard to the question about students who are on IEPs and 504s, I think the teachers are doing an commendable job. I think that they're going above and beyond, and they're doing cartwheels to meet the students' needs. I think it has been extremely helpful for the high need students who have been able to be in for 4 days, the students who we have been able to invite in for 4 days because we've had the capacity to do so, because they have a variety of other needs. I think that has been extremely valuable. And I think to be able to have done it for as long as we've been able to, it's been extremely helpful, because just to go back to what Cheryl and Michelle are saying, the students with disabilities who have trouble with cognitive shifting or adjusting to the schedules and the going back and forth, the 4 days has been very, very helpful. So I think that's been really great, but the stress, the impact, those are real things that are really happening. DESE putting other additional responsibilities on the special ed teachers and liaisons and service providers. That's been a lot, and that's been burdensome. The tracking and the paperwork and the individual learning plans on top of the IEPs, that's been a lot. Tracking and data collection so that we can confirm students' needs or lack of need for COVID compensatory services has been an additional responsibility and burden, in addition to the backlog of evals and meetings and paperwork that needed to get caught up with from the spring during the closure. So it's been a very stressful and hectic time. I have to really give it to the special ed staff because they have done it. The backlog is essentially caught up with, which is phenomenal. But all that means is that it's, you know, status quo. And so they've been going light years above and beyond. So yeah, all of those factors are coming to play. And, you know, the staff are good at expressing their needs. And I think being able to add a team chair to the middle and high school has been nice because it's taken some of that coordination responsibility for the eval teams off of their plates. But there's a lot on those plates. Those cups runneth over.
May I just make one more comment? I just wanted to comment back on the nurses again. And I may be speaking for all the nurses, but certainly I know for sure the Russell Street nurse, Nicole Berry, has, you know, before pre-COVID, at the end of the day, she went home. And now in this situation, I know that she has put out for the staff, she is very willing to answer their questions. And so I know that she is getting texts in the evening, early in the morning, over the weekends, with people asking advice or asking questions. And so she really is going above and beyond 1,000%. And I know there are days that are just incredibly, incredibly stressful for her, probably most days. But I do want to say thank you to her publicly, that we really do appreciate that she has been a support, not just for our students and staff during the workday, but in the evenings and early mornings and weekends as well. So I want to say thank you to Nicole.
Thank you.
We've had a couple hands up. Thank you, Pam, for your
I think I'm
patience.
off.
Yep, let's get her in front of us, Dorothy.
Okay. Pam Abate, please state your name, your street, and your question, please.
My name is Pamela Bate. My street is in Belmont, Massachusetts, because I'm a teacher in Littleton. I wanted to respond to Brad's question, if I could, about time online for kids. So just wanted to let you know that I'm online every second of every minute of instruction for them. And sometimes we have screens off because they're seniors or juniors in high school, but I'm there all the time. And the district has given me a lot of support with this. And I want you to all to know that the DESE question, I hate to say it has no merit, but we're doing it in Littleton. We are doing it. So I don't want you to worry about that because in other districts, they might not be doing it, but we are doing it in Littleton. So, and I also want to say kudos to the special ed department. I work with them every day. They're amazing people and we're getting that done too. That's all I want to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Pam. Appreciate it. It's one thing for us to say that we know it, and it's another thing for an actual teacher to testify to it. Again, me personally, I have no doubt that we're outperforming anything that the DESE can try to tell us what to do. We're fine, and we appreciate that.
Yeah, if I can just respond real quickly. Yeah, to Pam's point, I hope that wasn't, I didn't speak, didn't make it seem like I was doubting what teachers doing. I assumed the teachers were online. I just know that with the new, I was wondering how DESE would count that, and if it would count as kind of supporting students if you weren't actively talking to them at that moment. So it sounds like we're all on the same page here. Thank you, Pam.
All right. Next one, Dorothy.
Next one. Matthew Ridge, please state your name, your question.
Matthew Ridge, 325 Great Road. I appreciate what the teachers are all doing. I mean, it's tough. Don't get me wrong. And I know my mother was a teacher, so I sort of have a inside understanding of what happens after the classes end. But I'm almost wondering if we're missing one portion of this, which are the parents. because I'm working full time at home. I'm one of those necessary personnel. I work, well, I'm still working technically. Anyways, but my wife had to give up her job to be able to actually teach my son for school, for remote. And because of what happened over at his classroom, it's basically, he's been home for, what was it, 3 weeks now, 2 weeks? Week and a half. But he'll be coming back on the 22nd. But the thing is that parents don't have the same training as teachers. They are not teachers. A lot of parents don't have, and I love my wife, but she's even said herself, she just doesn't have, she doesn't have the mental strength or fortitude to be able to handle teaching, to keep our son and just pretty much on case, on point. So Wednesdays, although were great for the teachers, some of the parents, I have a feeling, are having a hard time with it because they don't know how to keep our kids focused, because it becomes a point where, and I know parents, everybody who has kids know this, but their kids act differently when they're at home. And sometimes they don't listen to mama and papa or mom and dad or whoever. And we're just having a hard time where it seems that he wants to learn, but he would rather be at school. And I know right now that is not something that is possible, but the committee has to remember is that parents don't just mentally don't have the ability to do this long term. So I mean, if you guys do think that a 2-week hiatus to go into remote for a full 2 weeks plus, I can tell you right now, my wife is going to, well, she's already said she's going to run away. I'm going, and it's, I mean, like I said, I appreciate what the teachers do. I mean, my wife cannot do what they do, and it's tough. And I don't know if our students, if this long term is going to be feasible for parents, because like I said, my wife has had to give up her job. So financially, forget financial, it's just psychological and everything else. It's actually causing issues at home because everybody's stressed and there's no way of getting out because everybody has to stay home. Everybody has to do things. Everybody has to, I mean, stay safe, stay secure, stay healthy. And this is affecting everybody. And I just don't, I don't know how else to say it, but we need to be careful that we don't put too much pressure at home either.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Matthew. Obviously, our struggle as school committee members is balancing all of these competing interests, and frankly, it's impossible. There is no real balance, and all we're really going to be able to do is spread the suffering. That's just the reality of the situation. We appreciate the point you're making. We appreciate the points that the principals made on behalf of the staff and Pam chiming in. I think this has been very edifying for us, and I think we're going to have a pretty robust discussion in a couple of minutes, and I think that it's going to be even more robust and informed than we might otherwise had anticipated prior to listening to all of this input that we've had over the last close to an hour. I'll let you chime back in, but I just want to make sure that you realize we definitely get both sides of it, and we're not taking one side over the other. We're not taking one side for granted at the expense of another. Any decision we make will fully incorporate all of the concerns that we know both sides, and I don't want to say sides, but both all the different stakeholders have in this what we're dealing with.
All right. Well, the only thing I'm going to ask is that is there a resource that parents can use that can reach out to? Because what's happening is at home, I mean, we're not, like I said, we're not trained. So the thing is that we don't have the same je ne sais quoi.
Right. No, we know that, and we know that we're not asking for miracles from our staff or our parents in regards to how they're going to support the students in this. We're really asking for mitigation and everybody just to do the best they can. In terms of, is there a resource? I mean, I'm sure there are some opportunities out there. I would ask you to reach out directly to your principal and teacher and see if they have some feedback or input for you. I know that PRCE has some programs for students, for parents that their students can go to that location instead of being at home. So I would reach out and see what you can find out.
All right. Thank you.
Yep. Thank you, Matthew.
Take question. David Coet, your name, your street, and your question, please.
All right, David Cowett, 6 Darrell Drive. Thank you. The question is about academic integrity that was brought up about the high school a minute ago. I guess
David, could we get your, excuse me, did you give your name and your address? I'm sorry.
Oh, yes, David Cowett, 6 Darrell Drive.
Thank you.
All right, my question was pertaining to the comment that was made about academic integrity. I think it was relevant to the high school a little bit earlier tonight. So I was wondering if, the comments that were made by the teachers or the concerns that were raised, what is being done about it? And maybe some suggestions that I would have, if it's possible, would be spreading the test days to not always be, say, on a Monday or Tuesday, or not always on a Thursday or Friday, but have some tests, alternating, so that sometimes it's the kids at home and sometimes it's the kids at school that take the test. And the second suggestion would be maybe looking at the test scores for the at-home cohort versus the in-school cohort to see if they jive or if there's a big discrepancy between the two. That might help you out a little bit.
All right. Thank you, David.
Okay, no more questions at this time.
All right.
Mike, I had asked the K-8 principals to, excuse me, report on the learning plan requests for change. I know Cheryl did like to hear from Schcmte in the middle school as well.
Sure, I'll jump in. So we had 2 requests, both at the first grade level, one from a student going from remote to hybrid and one going from hybrid to remote. So we just swapped them out. We're all good.
At the middle school, we had 12 families who requested a change from remote to hybrid. We had some others that we had already considered hybrid, who had gone temporarily. So we just kind of, we kept those numbers, kept the class sizes, and accounted for that. So it's pretty evenly distributed, 4 in each grade. I spent 2 or 3 hours this week trying to look at the schedules to make sure that we have room for these students. 8th grade, I think I almost have it down. I might have to make one little schedule change. I'll have to do 6 and 7. With a couple of the families, I may have to talk to them about switching cohorts, just because the numbers on a Thursday, Friday are much larger than a Monday, Tuesday. So if the families were amenable to going a different day, I don't know if they're siblings. So these are conversations I'll have once I compile all the data and make sure that we have room in the classes. I'll be reaching out to families early next week, but we had a pretty sizable number of families who want to bring their kids back into the school.
And Jason, is that to make sure they can maintain proper social distancing when you're talking about balancing the cohorts?
Absolutely. One of the problems that we have in middle school, 7th and 8th grade have leveled math classes. And so if your student is an 8th grade algebra student and they're currently remote, coming back in because 8th grade families did not choose remote with the same percentages that 6th and 7th did. So those classes might already be full in person. There might already be 14 or 15 there. So to bring someone back, there may not be room in that class. So that's why the cohort switch would happen. And the problem that I've run into is that you might have a cohort on Monday, Tuesday where that would be fine, but your English class might be full on that Monday, Tuesday. So this is really going to take some puzzle work on my part to see what combination of classes I can put together to try and accommodate these families. But yeah, it's all around social distancing.
Great. Thank you.
You bet.
All right. We good, Dr. Clinchey?
Yes, thank you.
All right. Thank you. All right. So I think a pretty good segue here into the next item on the agenda is a discussion about returning from the holiday break. There's a lot of discussion during our negotiation with the MOA on the MOA about, this time of year and what we thought we wanted to do. And one of the things that we said was, let's get through Thanksgiving and see if we can discern anything that we think may inform us on what we want to do as we transition through other periods where we are on a holiday or a break, talk about February and April. Dorothy, we have that one slide I sent. This is just another quick snapshot of what we saw in terms of positive cases in the schools pre-Thanksgiving and post-Thanksgiving. I just wanted to take a quick look at this before we start the discussion. So pre-Thanksgiving, we confirmed cases among our hybrid students and staff, we had 4. And then post-Thanksgiving, we jumped up to 14. And one thing to keep in mind is that pre-Thanksgiving was 46 school days over 11 weeks, 4 cases. And post-Thanksgiving, we had 14 cases, right in a 13 school days over 3 weeks, which is, a heavy concentration. And then it just below that is just a breakout day by day since we've come back from Thanksgiving. And you can see that in the first, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 days, we had the majority of those 14 cases. We had 10 of them, in that concentrated of 6 days. Then it leveled off again. And we still have some, and it's more than we have had. We had 4 cases after that. So we've had as many in those days as we had in the 42 days before Thanksgiving, but it's certainly at a much reduced rate compared to the first 6 days we were back from break. So we'll have to keep that up. That was just a quick snapshot. We're all cognizant of that. So I guess the question that the school committee should be debating right now is, what do we think we want to do, if anything, in terms of how we come back after the holiday break? We can come back the way we did after Thanksgiving, hoping that the attestation forms and all the information people are gathering and the adherence to state guidelines regarding travel and socialization and distancing and things like that help. And we're okay, and realizing that our numbers went up, but it wasn't truly catastrophic. It was stressful, as we've heard over the last little bit here at the meeting. But we got to the other side of it in some respects. So do we think we can come back on January 4th, which is what the current calendar is, in terms of our hybrid cohorts and remote Wednesdays and things like that? Or do we think it would be wiser to go remote for some period of time, whether it's a week or 2 weeks, to allow us to see if we're going to see a similar spike coming out of the winter, the holiday break, as we did coming out of the Thanksgiving break? Or do we want to do something different, something even longer? So to me, that's kind of what we should contemplate. If I'm open to other variations on that. And I'm curious what everybody has to think. Matt, you got your hand up, so go ahead and jump right in.
Yeah, I don't think anything longer than the 2 weeks would be necessary. We are seeing, those numbers. And for me, I always believe in exercising prudence. And I'd rather have the 2 weeks of a remote there than having to risk shutting down for a longer period of time, because we have spread. Personally, I think the schools have done a great job mitigating any spread right now, and we have no proof that there's actually been any spread at our schools. But I'm a cautious person. I just think it might be wise this time, looking at the numbers from Thanksgiving, to take a 2-week remote session.
All right. Anybody else? Justin?
Sure. My thought process is that, I don't know where I stand on this, but we had 14 cases coming back after Thanksgiving. And if we would have had the 14 cases no matter what. None of them appear to have happened at school. So my guess is we're probably going to have 20 cases on the other side of Christmas break, because the numbers are likely going to rise. So we're going to have 20 cases thereabouts if we're back in school and we're able to maintain the Swiss cheese at school. Or if we're remote, we're going to have 20 cases thereabouts. That's just my guess. So would it be reasonable to take a break for a week to sort of let some testing flush out and let the anxiety or stress level come down among the staff? I think that that's entirely reasonable. But if we can maintain our safety protocols, I don't think it's really going to do much. I think we could probably return to school, have our 14 to 20 cases over that a couple weeks after school, and get back into the groove of things. So that's where my head's at.
Okay. Timlin?
The only thing I don't know where I stand either on this. The only thing I'm really concerned about is what Michelle was saying earlier, is that those littles need to be in school. I get it that we should err on the side of caution and give the teachers maybe a little bit of break with having those kids all in a remote class and teaching, and giving the nurses a break too, where they're not having to do as much work that week. But I just worry about those littles that are, and even some of the older kids that need to be in school. I worry about those kids that need that interaction or need that face-to-face time. So I'm not really sure where I stand on this right now.
Brad, what are you thinking?
Yeah, I'm going back to Katrina's comments to start. A large and negative effect is a direct quote. She said, when we doubled 2 weeks after Thanksgiving for the town, there seems to be a strong correlation between community spread and school cases. But as Justin points out, the mitigation factors seem to be working. The strategies seem to be working. Our Swiss cheese is strong. So my question is that in fact a safe assumption that we've had no evidence of any in-school spread? So if that's the case, then that argues for, well, let's let our systems work. But I'm really chastened by the reports from our school leaders about how close we are to breaking. And Justin's saying, not globally at all, but our systems can withstand this. Our systems can, but I don't know, if one nurse goes down, 2 nurses go down, there are a lot of points where this experiment could collapse. And that's where I think Matt's kind of, let's be cautious and preserve the overall integrity of the system. That makes a lot of sense to me. I know I'm talking both sides of this issue. The other thing is that I'm old school. I look at paper calendars, and of course, not everyone celebrates Christmas, but the 4th is 10 days after Christmas, which I understand is the new CDC kind of guideline for the outer limits of quarantining or close monitoring. But Katrina was very clear. Is that we have to talk about this as a 2 holiday, or at least a 1 universal holiday of New Year's, and that's only obviously 4 days later. I don't know. I hesitate to see the logic for if we did go out 2 weeks, just looking at the calendar, suddenly you're almost 2.5, 3 weeks away from Christmas for those who celebrate that. That seems a long time. And if we decided to do any kind of extended break or mandatory remote, then I think 1 week would probably be the number I would be more comfortable with, because that gets us 10 days out from the first. And that seems to be where CDC is, if I understand it correctly, where CDC is saying it becomes safer. That's a long way of saying I don't know, but these are the things I'm thinking about.
Yeah.
I would just say, you know, I get what Brad and Justin are saying also, and I really doubt, given the, you know, that people are going to be at least they can't be out at bars for New Year's, but I would hope that we're not going to see a lot of New Year's parties, because that would be a contributing factor to community spread if we did see that. But I would definitely feel better at least having the week off after the break. And, you know, it's 2 days for the kids. And, you know, I would, if that was the compromise, I'd feel fine with that, because that is 2 weeks from Christmas where we're gathering with families. But if we do that, I would advise that, you know, to the community, you know, don't be having New Year's Eve parties, because it's just going to exacerbate the problem.
I'm going to ask Dr. Clenchey to chime in a moment. I will say personally that my attitude is that I think, you know, I can see all sides of it, and I definitely understand that going out for even a week, and even if it's just, you know, 2 days for each cohort, except for the kindergartners and transition, which would be, you know, 4 days. You know, I understand that that's impactful, but I also realize that we have all been preparing for this. There is absolutely been, in my mind, I hope for most people, that there's an inevitability that we are going to be remote, fully remote, at least once, if not more times, for different reasons. So we, again, while it's unfortunate that we may have to do that, I shouldn't be a surprise to anyone. And you know, we're asking everyone to just hang in there and mitigate the negative impact as much as they can. That's all we're asking for. It's all we really can ask for. I would argue that, you know, if we say we're going out for 2 weeks, we're out for 2 weeks, right? We're not going to renege in the middle of that and say, oh, wow, there was no cases. All right, everybody come back, we're running back. I don't think we would really want to contemplate that. But if we decided that we needed to be out or wanted to be remote for a week, we can always go remote another week or another week or another week if that's what the metrics and the situation is dictating, right? We can always add to it. That's easier to do than it is to realize that maybe we were a little bit overreactive and ended up being remote when we didn't need to be, or ended up having to jump through a bigger hoop or a tighter hoop to get back to where we want to be. So I'm leaning towards a week and keeping an eye on things. But at this point, I would like to ask Dr. Clenchey. I asked you during the week to think about what your viewpoint would be on this, and to check with your administrators, who we've actually heard from. And it's been, again, very, very edifying. I appreciate their willingness to help us understand the challenges. They were very forthcoming in that regard, and I appreciate that. But as the superintendent, Dr. Clenchey, what are you thinking?
I'd like to start by saying that, excuse me, our families, our teachers, our staff, and our students have done an incredible job since we've begun this journey. I am worried and concerned. When I look at the community metrics and our own in-house metrics, it's evident to me that after Thanksgiving, we were struggling. I mean, our cases of COVID-19 cases went up significantly. With that comes when we consider the increased infection rates of the community, we have more close contacts. And when we have staff out, if they're identified as close contacts, we need coverage. And it's very, very difficult. It was and still is for the time after Thanksgiving to be able to hire and have enough people in our classrooms. Our administrators have been in classrooms and have had to catch up on their administrative work after the day is over. Our ed assistants, thank goodness, we had the foresight to train them at the beginning of the year so that they could come in and take over classes when teachers were absent. Part of the thing that's really part of the issue that's really straining our system is the close contacts. Our teachers for the most part, have been asymptomatic when they're close contact, so they can continue teaching their class at home. But we need somebody in those classrooms, and that's where we're struggling. Our families and our staff have really helped us. I think immensely helped us in terms of keeping their children at home if somebody at home is sick. And our staff have been really good about it. If they're not feeling well, they stay at home. So that mitigation strategy, I feel, has been very, very significant in keeping us not having an in-school spread to this point in time. People are stressed, and that's not atypical. It's just the way it is around the globe at this point in time in the teaching profession and beyond. This is the first time our district has had to deal with the number of positive cases that we do have. Other districts have reached there much faster than we are, so they're still stressed, but they're realizing through experience that the mitigation strategies that they have in their schools are, for the most part, keeping the spread out of the schools. When looking at the data, it appears to me that you have a window of about 8 days where most of these infections started to occur within our school system. And when you look at the recommendation for testing between days 4 and 6, I would feel very comfortable, and I want to, before I even make this statement, I want to make sure that everybody realizes that if we decided to go remote for a period of time, this is a mitigation strategy. This is a strategy that's going to help us maintain our hybrid program within our schools. It's nothing more than that. And my intent as a superintendent is to have as much in-person instruction as possible, providing that we can provide a safe environment for students and staff. So having said that, my recommendation would be I would feel comfortable with a week of remote for the entire school district. We would return Monday, January 11th. That would give us, if we start January 2nd, that would give us 9 days. 9 days for symptoms to show up in our in-school population if somebody was exposed. I feel that would be an effective mitigation strategy at this point in time. I do have a lot of hesitancy in even considering to just go on as is. I think this was an eye-opener to us, and it gave us some tangible evidence to look at after Thanksgiving and saying, yes, this is what happens after holiday break. Well, maybe it's not going to happen again. I doubt it when we look at the metrics where we're at within our community and beyond. So I would feel very comfortable recommending a week of remote learning after the holiday break.
All right. Thank you. I appreciate that. So we've heard from each other. We've heard from the administration. So we have a consensus. Any more input?
Can I say one more thing, Mike? I'm sorry. I'm remembering our last conversation when we heard from so many people persuasively, exhorting us to look at the science, look at the data. Dr. Clinchey just referred to it, right? We had 3.5 times as many cases in the 13 days after Thanksgiving than we did in the 9-10 weeks beforehand. That's with the attestation forms. That's with everybody pledging, officially pledging to be on their best behavior. And, again, to Justin's point, we handled it, but from what I'm hearing from the school leaders is we barely handled it. Struggling, I'm hearing verbs struggling and straining and stressed. And if we want to keep this experiment going, then maybe this kind of mitigation strategy is appropriate and because 3.5 times our earlier numbers now would overwhelm the system. If we can assume, and maybe it's not a safe assumption, that Christmas or those holidays and New Year's are analogous to Thanksgiving.
All right. I see a hand up, so let's go ahead and do that.
Okay. John, please state your name, your street, and your question, please.
It's John Kurzweig, 171 Hartwell. So I was listening in on the information about the cases
And I see some points about the cases after Thanksgiving, and I'm not necessarily going to weigh in on the pros and cons of the doing the 1 week delay or remote, I guess we'll call it. But I did send some information to the superintendent and Mr. Fontello about other schools' experiences as it relates to in-person testing, and really my comment is, and I know we wouldn't be able to make a decision in this meeting, obviously, but my position is that we actually do have a lot of data in hand about the experiences of other schools in-person learning, and in that in-person learning, if there was any significant problem with in-person learning when it comes to either teachers' health or students' health, if there was some significant impact, we wouldn't have a recommendation from Dr. Fauci or Dr. Redfield to have the kids in school. And I think the school board is trying to, I understand they're trying to weigh all the different stakeholders. But I think the science overall is on the side of having the kids in school. I get the fear. The fear factor is strong. But I will continue to ask and urge that the school committee and the school really dig into how are some of these other schools able to offer in-person learning 5 days a week. I think there should be a subcommittee to look into that, or a committee, even the school committee, to maybe poll these schools and see what they're doing and how they can do it safely. Because I think it can be done safely. Data shows that it can be done safely. Again, Dr. Redfield of the CDC, Dr. Fauci of NIH, I believe they all have statements on record saying the kids should be in school. And I think the school board, in a way, is acting almost as a public health directorate here. If the public health agencies said, hey, no school, we need to shut it down, okay. And I would hope when they did say that, they would do that based on the science. So please, whatever's decided here for the 1 week pause, I hope after that 1 week pause, if it's so adopted, that the school committee really dig into, how we can get more in-person learning in the second half of the year. So thank you.
All right, thank you, John.
Few questions.
Yep, go ahead.
Crystal, I can't grab your last name. Crystal D.
Dion.
Crystal Dion, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Sorry, Crystal.
70 Harvard Road. Full disclosure, I'm a teacher here in Littleton, but I just wanted to comment on the remarks made from the previous speaker about private school. I think one thing that we need to consider is that private schools have a lot more at stake than our public schools and want to keep parents in the dark with their numbers, and things are being hidden from people outside, just from some insider information from other private schools. So that's just something to consider.
Okay, thank you.
Carrie Cusick, your name, your street, and your question, please.
Hello, my name is Carrie Cusick, 3 Silver Birch Lane, and I am just really making a point just to be supportive of the remote period after the Christmas holiday break and the New Year's break. More as a standpoint, yes, of course, of safety and the numbers that we have and how they're increasing, but also based on coverage that the schools have been lacking. That's a big concern to me. I'm also an educator in another district, And we've had college kids come in to cover, which they've been wonderful, but that's just a concern that I do have after the holiday break of just the coverage, the mixing that could be happening, not really following the COVID protocols that way too. So I'm just in support of the remote model that you are discussing to happen, quite possibly, and voting on tonight for after the holiday break. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Carrie.
Yeah.
All right. I don't feel that we truly need to take a vote on this, but I think it would be a good idea. We could just give direction to the administration, but I think in terms of clarity and record, I think I would like to entertain any motion that anyone would like to put on the floor.
Make a motion that Littleton Public Schools go remote from January 4th through January 8th with the intent of returning on January 11th to hybrid instruction.
I'll second the motion.
All right, a motion made and seconded. Is there any further discussion on that motion? All right, hearing none, I'll take.
Just say,
no, go ahead, Brett.
I'll just say that if this works, then we won't be able to tell it works, right? This is one of those things where if we're being cautious, then the preventive measures may not always show up that it was beneficial to us. Just to note that.
All right.
Along those lines, my question was, so will we continue to be notified of students that are community members that test positive during our what will be out for 2.5 weeks or 3 weeks, right?
That's a good point, Justin. And I would ask the administration, Kelly Clinch and I did have a brief discussion about this. We will reach out to the community and make sure they understand that we do expect that they would continue to update us on if they have students or if they're staff members, if they're testing positive or in quarantine because they were in a close contact, because that's the only way we're going to be able to accurately inform ourselves about, whether we think a week is enough or if we think we need to go longer. Absent that type of information directly related to the school community, I feel personally that we would really need to start focusing more on the community information, which may not be as predictive and as accurate as we would like it to be, but might be the resource we would need to use. So it's really, I think, important that we'll get that message out there. We'll make sure people know that what our expectations are, and hopefully everybody will conform, and then that'll help us. Brad?
I'll just say I think that information is going to be very, very important. My vote, which I'll make in a second, is largely based on that spike, 3.5 times in the 5-6 days after Thanksgiving. We'll need more data if we're making decisions as we move through the rest of the year, if that was an aberration or if there's a pattern. So we're going to need information.
Yeah. That's a good point, Justin. Thank you very much. Any other comments or input? All right. Are we
going to do the attestation form baked into the 1 week of remote after the 1 week or the week and a half of holiday break?
That is something that is agreed to in the MOA, but we can certainly approach the LEA to see what their viewpoint on that is. So depending on the outcome of this vote, we can certainly do that. I think that there is a certain level of redundancy, and maybe the attestation isn't anywhere near as meaningful if we are remote, but at the same time, it is in the MOA that we agreed to. So it would have to be a joint agreement between both parties to that MOA to waive that. But that is another issue that we will address based on the outcome of this vote. Okay. All right. Any other questions or comments or input? All right. Hearing none, I'll take a roll call vote. Matt?
Matt Hunt, yes.
Brad?
Brad Austin, yes.
Timlin?
Timlin Rassius, yes.
Justin?
Justin McCarthy, yes.
And Mike Fontanella votes yes as well. So All right, thank you for everyone for that. We're not done yet, but the meeting, but that was a lot to get through, but it was very meaningful. Again, we are not cavalier in the decision we just made and the impact that it's going to have on the community. We understand it. We think it's the right thing to do in terms of trying to achieve that balance that we talk about and that we're striving for, and we will continue to strive for throughout the rest of this school year. We will revisit it, and we're meeting that first week, so we'll be taking a look, and we'll let the community know what we're thinking in terms of January 11th, and then we'll continue to have these types of discussions and presentations of information and viewpoints as we go through the other breaks that are built into the school calendar. So thank you for all that. All right, Dr. Clenchey, next is a reminder regarding snow days and remote days during this interesting school year.
Kind of don't need much of a reminder after today, to say the least, but I did send a letter out to families this week, reminding them of what our approach is going to be this year for snow days, either a remote day or a traditional snow day. One thing that we're going to have to do this year is certainly ascertain the magnitude of the storm and in terms of how it may affect power outages, not only in our community but beyond, because a lot of our staff live in other communities, and if we don't have access to Google Classroom and our computers, remote learning will not be very successful, which brings into question a time on learning issue. So the decisions are going to have to be made the night before rather than early in the morning like we normally do. I see this opportunity for remote learning as an advantage in terms of when we have delays during the year, making sure that our roads are safe for our students to travel and our staff to travel to school, rather than put them on the roads when we have a go-ahead. By the time they get there, half the day's over. This would be an opportunity to offer remote learning during those days. We're going to review this as the year goes on. I mean, it's impossible to predict how many snowstorms we're going to have this year that actually impact whether or not we can have our buildings stay open. But we feel that this is the best way to go. I've read an article this morning on what's happening nationally, and 39% of districts have hopped on to the remote wagon, so to speak. 32 are still thinking about it, and the rest are like the traditional snow day, so to speak. And when I teased that out today, it was interesting because most of those areas were in snowbound areas, snow areas where skiing and snow sports were part of the economy. So it was kind of interesting to take some time teasing that out.
All right, thank you. Next, we're going to have an update on the collective bargaining agreement with the LEA. We have a short presentation on this. Just want to preface these comments with this is not related to the MOA that was negotiated as part of this school year and dealing with this school year relative to COVID. This is an agreement on the overall collective bargaining agreement. Dorothy, yeah, thank you. So this is regarding a new contract, overall collective bargaining agreement between the Littleton School Committee and the Littleton Educators Association. We just go to the next slide. It seems like a long time ago, but the school committee and the LEA had begun negotiations on a new contract in February of 2020 because we were coming to the end of our previous 3-year contract. But after starting the negotiations, we suspended them by mutual agreement as we realized how impactful the pandemic was going to be. But prior to the suspension, both sides had brought multiple proposals to the table. So we weren't well underway in terms of the number of times we met, but we were well underway in terms of both sides had multiple proposals on the table, and we're starting to discuss them. We resumed negotiations a few weeks ago once we got done with the MOA that related to this current school year. and we were able to, in short order, come to a tentative agreement, which we are going to vote on tonight. And the LEA is scheduled for a vote on this agreement, or this tentative agreement, on the 22nd next week. This will be a 3-year agreement, retroactive to September 2020, and covers the current school year as well as the next school year, 21-22, and the succeeding school year after that, 2022 and 2023. We have agreed to a 2% salary increase for the current school year, which will be retroactive back to September. We've also agreed to some language changes from proposals from both sides that were on the table. However, many of the proposals, as a matter of fact, I would argue that the majority of the proposals from both sides were removed from the negotiation without prejudice and with no rights or privileges waived. So they're not part of this agreement. We agreed, both sides to agree to negotiate in the spring of 2021 solely regarding salaries for the next 2 years in this 3-year agreement. Waiting until the spring will allow us some more time to gather information regarding local and state budgets. We're being advised that the next 2 fiscal years could be significantly challenging as our economy and our state budget and our local budget reacts to the impact of the pandemic on economic growth and tax collection and all the things that determine how much money is available to spend on local and municipal and state budgets. But that's all we will be negotiating this spring and possibly next spring. There will be no negotiations for additional language changes until the fall of 2022 and the winter of 2023 as the new contract term reaches the end. Any negotiation prior to that will just be on, the goal will be to get the next 2 years of the salary done this spring, but we may decide, both parties, that just taking care of fiscal year 22 is appropriate and waiting to come back to the table on fiscal year 23. It just depends on how much impact and uncertainty and information we can gather. The idea of signing this 3-year contract on the language and only negotiating the salary will allow both sides to take a well-deserved and meaningful respite from negotiating, and it also gives us a chance to get back to a more normal negotiating environment where the things we're talking about are relevant to a normal school year and not trying to fit these things into an abnormal school year. I think that might be it. Is that the last slide on that? Yep. So I would like to say great appreciation to the negotiating team of the LEA. They came to quick agreement on this. It was a good dialogue. Both sides quickly realized that there was some benefit. We'd come to terms on the salary, and we wanted to get the salary into the paychecks of the teachers as soon as possible. And we appreciate the fact that the LEA agreed with us that trying to do language right now just seemed fruitless and wasn't really worth the aggravation. And we're fully happy to get back to the table with them at a more appropriate time and engage in that kind of negotiation. So appreciate their willingness to come to agreement on this. We're hopeful that they'll vote to ratify this. That was our executive session tonight, was for Matt and I to present this to the rest of the school committee members and get their input. It seems like everybody was in agreement on that this is a good deal for us. And but at this point, if there's any input or comment anybody would like to make prior to entertaining a motion, now's the time. Timlin?
I just wanted to thank you and Matt again for all your hard work this year with all of this negotiating. I know it was a lot, and I appreciate you guys doing it for us, and I appreciate the LEA negotiating team. Just thanks all of you for coming to an agreement.
I'm Brad Austin. I second that.
All right. Seeing no other input, I will entertain a motion.
Brad, are you going?
Yeah, well, I was trying to figure out the language. I move to accept the MOA and negotiate with the LEA.
Good enough. That will suffice.
Second.
All right. Motion made and seconded. Is there any further discussion on that motion? Hearing none, I'll take a roll call vote. Brad?
Brad Austin votes yes.
Matt?
Matt Hunt votes yes.
Timlin?
Timlin Rassius, yes.
Justin?
Justin McCarthy votes yes.
And Mike Fontanella votes yes as well. All right, thank you. That's done. It's a big one off the to-do list. It's going to make my Christmas a lot better. All right, we're done with old business at this point. We're at the second point in the meeting. If there are any other interested citizens who haven't had a chance to get in front of us and would like to, now is the time to use the raise your hand function. All right.
More questions?
Seeing none, we'll get quickly through the subcommittee reports. PMBC.
Nothing to report.
Okay. Budget subcommittee.
Nope. Nothing to report.
Okay. Policy subcommittee.
Timlin and I would like to report that we keep forgetting we have to get the meeting posted for 48 hours before we meet. So we keep putting it off, but we will do that early in the new year. I'm sorry.
All right. That's fine. That's fine. Appreciate it. Anything on CPAC, Brad, or are we good?
CPAC is good. That's what I was just point out that there was a meeting last night. I think 9 or 10 families are represented. Really, the people who are leading the interim team are doing a great job. We'll have just a kick-ass website. That's an official term. And a lot of resources. We're talking about how to form a support group where parents, CPAC will function as CPAC, but also trying to find ways where parents can really support each other. And we talked a lot last night about how that could be beneficial. We had parents representing everybody from preschool through high schools. I thought is a really promising start. And I want to
Awesome.
thank those who are taking the lead for that.
Great. Appreciate you supporting that as a school committee member. All right. Any other business? All right. We got one more hand coming up at the last second. Let's go
Okay,
ahead.
John, state your name, your street, and your question, please.
Yeah, it's John Kerswick again. And this is just a follow up about the returning in person. So I guess my question to the committee is, and maybe you don't have an answer readily available, but what's the vision for returning to 5 days a week in person for all those that I guess that would want to, minimally, providing maybe an option for remote learners, for people that still want to do remote. But what's the metric? What's the vision? What's needed to return to 5 days a week in person? What metric does the committee have in their mind? Is it no more COVID deaths in the state of Massachusetts? Is it, 1% positive infective rate? Is it everybody is vaccinated? I mean, what's the vision?
Right. There is no specific number. We haven't had those types of discussions. I would argue that it would certainly require a significant reduction in the numbers that we're facing now. There's just no getting around that for the five of us, at least as far as I've discerned from the discussions that we've had since July and August. We were optimistic and supportive of the hybrid model and felt like it was a good way to start, and that maybe we could reevaluate and get more aggressive if the numbers held. The numbers have not held. That's just a fact. I know the points you made, John, about that there is some information out there, data studies that would indicate that the infection rate community-wide doesn't necessarily translate into a one-for-one risk level in the schools based on a variety of factors regarding how children get or spread the virus. But the fact of the matter is that we have adults in the building, and it's just not just children. So it's going to require a significant reduction, back towards the numbers that we were minimally seeing in September. Short of that, I don't see us making a significant change. We are committed to, you heard some talk about Wednesdays. We heard some talk about from our principals that maybe for our younger learners, tweaking the way we implement the hybrid model might be meaningful in terms of helping them get the benefit of it. So we are going to take another look and reevaluate and see if there's some changes we think that we can make that would be positive. It's also going to require guidance from the state and from other public agencies, health agencies. I know you cited some, Dr. Fauci and Redfield. I would argue that the comments they made regarding their support for more widespread in-person instruction was prior to the latest surge. That I think about it like that. So we are committed to reevaluating and adjusting if we think there is an opportunity. I would argue that right now the opportunity is not truly there.
Okay, yeah. So, all right. I mean, that's something we could minimally say that we have a little bit of a stake in the ground. I mean, and I'm not holding you to that. You're not speaking for the whole community, but essentially what I'm hearing is cases getting back more towards the September level might be an appropriate transition point.
Yep.
All right. Thank you very much.
Yep, you're welcome. All right. I think we can wrap it up as we head into the Christmas. I will entertain a motion for adjournment.
Make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All right. Motion made and seconded. I'll take a roll call vote. Brad?
I'm sorry, our next meeting won't be, like, we get a couple weeks off, is that right?
Yep. We'll meet.
You have to meet next week, Brad.
Yeah.
I gotta tell Dorothy. So we're not meeting till the 7th, is what we're saying?
Hold on. That is correct. It's conceivable we could meet earlier in that week if we felt it was beneficial and necessary, but it wouldn't be before the 4th.
Okay.
It'll be in that week. Okay. All right. So Brad, how do you vote on the motion to adjourn?
Brad Austin votes yes.
All right. Thank you. All right. Timlin?
Evelyn Rossi, yes.
Matt?
Matt Hunt votes yes.
And Justin?
Justin McCarthy, yes.
And Mike Fondell votes yes. Thank you, everyone. Have a Merry Christmas and Happy Holidays and Hanukkah and Kwanzaa and everything else. And please be safe. And we will see you all in 2021. 2020 will be gone by the time we come back. For better or for worse. Thank
Happy
you, everyone.
holidays.
Thank you, TV.
Merry Christmas.
Judy and Dave, Dorothy, thank you. Tina, thank you. Goodbye, everybody.